logging in, correct?
Right.
You put the end of your glasses.
Okay.
Okay. Over the top of it. It helps. Yes, it does. Thank you. I couldn't tell you that. You put your glasses
I'll get
over
one.
the tip right here. Found your
Yeah.
toes.
All right, call me to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Could you do a roll call, please?
Dr. Badger,
Present.
Mrs. Bruckner. Here. Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Here.
Mr. Gazar,
Here.
Mr. Kroll,
Here.
Mr. Musser,
Present.
Ms. Smith,
Here.
Mr. Steiner,
Here.
Mrs. Weaver.
Here.
Thank you. Item 104 is recommended that the agenda for the August 11, 2020 board meeting be approved as presented. Have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor? Actually, I'm sorry. Do we have any, are there any changes to the agenda? Any suggestions, problems? Okay. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Move to 201, comments from the public. Mr. Neff, if you could check for us, please. Is there anyone who would like to give a public comment?
Oh, yes. At the top there.
Oh, okay. Public was not supposed to be here in the room tonight.
No, it's on it then.
Well,
They're on the.
Up
it's
there,
on the-
Tom.
It's on the, there is
On-
somebody with their, on the
Oh,
agenda.
on
with
Zoom.
their hand raised.
Okay, go ahead.
Hello?
We can hear you, Brenda.
Okay, I would like to say a couple words on the mascot issue. It'll just be a couple minutes. It's to the school board and residents of Bellefonte. My name is Brenda Reichert. I'm a resident of Bellefonte and a graduate of Bellefonte High School class of 1980. I am speaking today on behalf of the mascot issue. I really do not believe that this should be an issue at this time during a pandemic and the school starting. But since some people won't give it a rest, I'm here to say a few words. I'm here today to give the board and residents my opinion of Bellefonte keeping the Red Raiders as a mascot. First of all, my great-great-grandmother was a Native American, was born, lived, raised her family, and died in Clinton County, Pennsylvania. Her name was Rebecca Yost Killinger, 1846 to 1929. When I was growing up, I was always taught to treat people no matter what color, red, black, yellow, or white, with respect and how I wanted to be treated. The one problem today is this generation wasn't taught that. I remember when I first realized that Bellefonte was called the Red Raiders, was the first time my father took my sister and I to a high school football game to see my cousin play. I was in elementary school at the time. I couldn't wait to tell my grandmother about it. When I went down to my grandparents' house and told them about Bellefonte being called the Red Raiders, my grandmother told me that Bellefonte being called the Red Raiders is showing pride and honor for the Native Americans. Always be proud of that. You have Native American blood in your family line. Always be proud of that. That is your heritage. I never once thought that Bellefonte being called the Red Raiders as their mascot, either going to school or to this day, ever thought about it being racist or making fun of the Native Americans. I thought and still do believe that is showing pride, honor, and respect. I am proud of my heritage, and I know that my great-great-grandma would be proud of Bellefonte being called the Red Raiders. As a relative of a Native American who lived in Clinton County, Pennsylvania, I feel that Bellefonte should be called the Red Raiders and leave the mascot alone. It is for pride, honor, and respect, and not hatred or racism. One more comment I want to make. I wrote a letter to the All About Cherokee Native American group on Facebook about the mascot issue. 271 members either loved it or liked it, and they had so many wonderful comments. And Andrea Royer actually emailed it to you. And thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any others online? No?
Not seeing any at this time.
Thank you. And so just as a reminder to those watching, so until further notice, our board meetings are restricted to presentations and board members and staff here for the meetings so that we can remain under our 25 room limit. And I believe it's on both our website and social media that public is encouraged to attend via Zoom link or live stream. We're still on the live stream. So you can do a live stream for watching only. Or you can register through Zoom to give public comments virtually that way. That allows more people to participate and keep us within the guidelines of the governor.
Go ahead.
Yes.
It does say not beyond 25.
Yes.
Are we beyond 25?
We are not, but we already have about 15 people in the room.
That's not my issue. My issue is that there are people committed to being in the building up to 25.
That's correct.
And so I'm just requesting people who attend be allowed to ignore.
Mr. Etter, do you have an opinion on that as far as you don't want to set the precedent that if you just wait long enough until other people are asked to leave that you can come in and speak in person?
I'm sorry, I could hear Mr. Musser, but I couldn't make out what he said. Could you repeat that or summarize it, please?
So we've already asked quite a few people to leave that showed up from the public that did not see that this is for board members, staff, and supporting functions here to remain under our 25% limit. There were some public that did not get that memo or notice. So I say several have left because of that, and they're still want to come here. I want to speak publicly. We want to set the precedent that wait long enough.
So my strong request is, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can't make out what you're saying.
Okay. Am I loud enough now?
Yes.
My comment is that that says no more than 25. We're not beyond 25. We have people from the public who are looking to speak, wishing to speak. Is there any reason that they cannot speak?
I'm still having trouble. I mean, it's coming and going and I can't make out everything that you're saying. I think you said that we're still under the 25. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I don't know what I had conversations with Mr. Gazzara about the 25 person limit. And it was my understanding that a written announcement was going to go out to the effect that we were not allowing members of the general public, that we were only having board members and administrators present, physically present in the boardroom during meetings. Is that a correct understanding of what we talked about, John?
Yes.
Okay, so, a written statement did go out to that effect. I mean, it wasn't that we were trying to preclude people and we just instituted that tonight. This was something that we talked about a week or more ago, and it was coming in the aftermath of the 25-person restriction.
That's correct.
Okay, so Rodney, tell me again what your question or concern is, please.
On the Facebook that I saw was no indication that people who attended could not speak. I don't know where the others was posted, but in my preview of the Facebook post on the district website, indicated that as long as we were at 25 or less, it was a public meeting. We have chairs seated out here for people to attend.
Are there members of the public physically present who wish to speak?
Yes.
Yes, there are.
And we're under 25 even with the members of the public present.
We are, but as I say, the only caveat that I mentioned was we've already turned away at least 10 to 15.
I understand, but the 10 to 15 would have put us over the 25 limit, correct?
Well, they were here first and had to leave.
And that's unfortunate. As I've been saying for the last 4 to 5 months, we find ourselves in a situation where, because of restrictions that the state government has imposed upon us or restrictions that we have imposed upon ourselves, that we are having difficulty in our normal and typical sense of complying with the Sunshine Act in the way that we would usually do so. I don't think the intent was, with turning away people before the start of, at the beginning of this meeting, to preclude them from participating, whether being physically present or speaking while physically present. And it's one of those unfortunate shortcomings that we're having as a result of the nature that of the situation that we find ourselves in. If we are under 25, and you have told me that we are under 25, for the purposes of tonight's meeting, because there appears to be some discrepancy in what information went out, I would allow the individuals who are present and wish to speak. And as we have been doing in the past, and I'm assuming we're going to do tonight as well, John, we have had a second period of public comment at the end of the meeting to accommodate individuals who may have left the meeting because they were turned away and gone home, and it will give them an opportunity to participate and make a public comment. For the future, I think we need to make doubly certain that whatever our announcement of our meeting policy is going to be, a hard limit of 25 and only board members and administrators, then we need to be consistent in our application. But for tonight's purposes, and I recognize that it's not as clean as I would like it to be, again, I would let the individuals who are physically present speak, and then I would have the second public comment period at the end. Hopefully we can pick up anyone who was turned away early on in the meeting and they are able to return to their home or some other location and participate remotely.
Okay, thank you. So if you'd like to come up, you're welcome to come up and speak.
My name is Patrick Norris. I'm a resident of Bellefonte. I have 2 children in the school district. I have in my drawer at home a Lucky t-shirt that I've been wearing now for almost 30 years, believe it or not. It's got a lot of holes and stains in it, and I know most people would be embarrassed to wear it, but I love it actually. It's part of my personal history. It's got a lot of memories for me, good and bad. I know that to some people this might sound like a dumb thing to care about, but this shirt is, to me, emblematic of who I am as a person. Now, I know it's kind of far-fetched, but I'm trying to imagine a scenario where this beloved t-shirt was actually harming a kid here in Bellefonte. Something insidious and unknown to me, but real. Maybe encouraging them to drop out of school or causing them to get beat up. Now, I can tell you I'd be really sad about it. And I can tell you not too proudly that I might try and think of some ways to get around it, but I can't imagine not getting rid of this t-shirt because maybe it means a lot to me but at the end of the day, it's just a shirt. Getting rid of it won't erase my memories. It won't make me less of the person that I am. For over 50 years, virtually every Native American organization has been begging schools like ours to stop using race-based mascots. Now, if the very group that we say we are honoring comes back to us and says, please stop, we don't find this to be an honor. This is actually making our situation worse. That to me is reason enough to listen and comply. But we've also heard that our mascot is somehow teaching history and keeping Native people's stories alive. To counter this very common misconception, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights, not my opinion, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights has stated that Indian-based symbols and team names are not accurate representations of Native Americans. Even those that purport to be positive are actually romantic stereotypes that give a distorted view of the past. These false portrayals prevent non-Native Americans from understanding the true historic and cultural experiences of American Indians. Sadly, they also encourage biases and prejudices that have a negative effect on contemporary Indian people. We heard from some of those contemporary Indian people who are our neighbors at your last meeting. So not only are these mascots not keeping history alive, they are actually preventing us from learning about Native Americans. Then there are the folks who say, well, it might be a popular opinion these days to do away with Native American mascots, but they're not actually hurting anyone. But this board has already been presented with the findings of numerous scientific studies, not my opinion, not your opinion, scientific studies detailing the very real psychosocial harm exacerbated by these mascots: depression, suicide, substance abuse, racially motivated violence. Finally, it's been suggested that while this may be an important issue for our community, that it is not a matter of educational significance. Now, if our mascot was an eagle, a mountain lion, even a paperclip, that would be an accurate statement. But by utilizing a race-based mascot, we have created a very real educational problem. In 2005, the American Psychological Association called for the immediate retirement of all American Indian mascots. Their position, backed by extensive research, is that these mascots, and I quote, undermine the educational experiences of members of all communities, especially those that have little or no contact with Indigenous peoples. And it establishes an unwelcome and hostile learning environment. Let me repeat that. A hostile learning environment for Native American students that affirms the negative images and stereotypes that are promoted in mainstream society. So Native American groups, the people that we're supposedly honoring, have asked us to stop. The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights has told us that the mascot does not promote historical understanding, but actually degrades it. Numerous scientists have told us that the mascot contributes to real documented psychosocial harms to a racial minority. And the American Psychological Association tells us that it undermines the educational experience of all children and creates a hostile learning environment. For all of these reasons and more, this board must take action to remove our Native American mascot. These t-shirts, these jerseys, they might feel really important to us right now, but they are not more important than the health, education of children. We should do this now, while we can, while we have a chance to do it honorably and on our own terms. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any others who would like to speak?
Allowed more on the agenda?
Yep, you're in the room now. You're welcome.
My name is Lisa Hovies. I'm a Bellefonte resident, taxpayer, and mother, and an alumni of Bellefonte. Been here before. I actually had nothing prepared because I was told, nothing against you, President, I was told I wasn't allowed to come in. As we listened outside, we found out we could. All I really have to say is I really hope that as a school district, that we should be, as a school district, be concentrating on so much more than a mascot. I mean, we were not supposed to talk about this, and that to me was great because we were supposed to be working on getting kids back to school. And mine graduated already, but back to school, worrying about the elementary school, worrying about other things that are more important. This has been our mascot for so many years. To me, it just needs to be let alone and just figure out how to get our kids a better education now. A mascot should not even be an issue right now. We just have so many more things in this district to deal with. I have a business that's in the Baldego district, and I hear so much from them. And then everything coming from this, and being an alumni here, it's just sad that this is what it's come to. It's sad to see people against each other about something that shouldn't even be. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else who would like to address the board this evening?
Yep, Bellefonte Area School District Board members, alumni, community, and students. She Holly Anderson, Kalago Yenisha, Salamis Yenisha, Dolchkushni Boshichin, Bulgana Ada Shichedo, Kanisat Ada Chanel, Akut Ego A Dinesta. I'm originally from the Navajo Nation in northeastern Arizona, and I'm currently an associate professor of education at the Penn State University College of Education here at University Park. I'm a former elementary school teacher and high school athletic coach. I am a mom to an incoming first grader who will grow up in the Bellefonte Area School District. And like the rest of you, I'm a visitor here on this land that is traditional homelands of the Haudenosaunee. You might know them as the Iroquois Confederacy, the Seneca, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Mohawk, Tuscarora. And also we are visitors here on the land of the Delaware, the Lenape, Shawnee, Susquehanna, and other Ohio Valley nations. I would like to first thank you for allowing me to make a statement. I hope to add to the discussion in a positive way. I became a teacher and now a professor because I understand the power of education. The federal Indian boarding schools, such as Carlisle Indian School, which is here in Pennsylvania, that Indigenous children were forcibly sent to, continue to have detrimental and traumatic effects on Indigenous communities. I seek education as a way to help heal our Indigenous communities. My statement is based on my own wonderings and through two important beliefs that I have about everyone involved, the Bellefonte alumni, school board, and community. First, I believe that all our intentions are positive and that we all care about our children and community. Second, I also believe that because we are discussing the issue of the Bellefonte Area School District, which is an educational institution, we respect education and the processes of teaching and learning and moral youth development. I echo and recognize some of the reasons stated, just now stated, and others that have expressed concern. The Bellefonte alumni who started the petition and are pursuing the removal of the Red Raiders mascot. I understand that there have been previous actions taken by the school board to remove the imagery that accompanied the name, and I'm grateful for that, so thank you for that. However, the name itself still is deeply rooted in racist and dehumanizing meanings that perpetuate stereotypes that are psychologically detrimental to Indigenous people and to the understanding of Indigenous people by non-Indigenous people. Some people say that it's not a derogatory term, but from an Indigenous perspective, I'm here to tell you that it is, and it's based upon research as well. I wonder when young students, so this is me from a mom and a teacher of young students and a teacher educator. I teach teachers, right? I wonder when young students of the school are exposed to, cheer for, and wear sweatshirts, t-shirts, and other material that bear the name Red Raiders, and they ask their parents, what is a Red Raider? What is the response to that? How is the term red explained without describing it as a racial term for physical characteristics to categorize people by skin color, with white being superior? Is the term raiders explained as the derogatory term it is with reference to uncivilized savagery and thievery? If this term is never questioned, the issue might be worse off. That is, it perpetuates ignorance towards an understanding of a holistic history that is central to understanding the roots of the United States and the contemporary issues we still face as a nation. I also wonder, what effect does the use of the phrase have on community building and/or division? Studies have shown that institutional norms, such as the normalization of the phrase Red Raiders, play an important role in expression of prejudice and experiences of belonging. As the accomplishments and pride for the school, students, and community are expressed as something to be celebrated, how does the celebration feel to those who are marginalized by the term or the use of the term? In other words, as a mother and an educator, I would be the first to celebrate my child's success and that of her peers, right? The accomplishment of our children, whether it's academically, creatively, athletically, all these great things that our kids are capable of, we want to cheer for them. And so, I think about cheering for the Red Raiders, right? Or showing any support through wearing of clothing, waving of banners, or other way of parading the name. With very limited representation of the Indigenous community in Bellefonte and the area, I'm concerned about the one representation being Red Raiders. And I would not perpetuate that. Those who understand the traumatic implications of the mascot name who are non-Indigenous might also feel this way. So it's not only me as an Indigenous person, right? For the young people who know the name is wrong, but feel the pressure to use it and celebrate it, I fear that it will also cause harm to their identity development and feelings of belonging as well. Why can't we have a mascot that everyone can proudly display as a way to show our celebration of our children? I wonder, when using the derogatory phrase to describe your school and students, when that's the institutional norm, how are we supporting the people marginalized by that norm? Or how are you inflicting harm onto your own students?
Ma'am.
How is your school unwelcoming to its own students, alumni, faculty, and staff? Another wondering I have is based on some of the stated reasons as to why to keep the mascot. I greatly appreciate, sincerely appreciate, the perspective that people want to honor and show respect for Indigenous people of the area and the struggles that they have endured. And I am interested in the accountability to which the school district holds themselves to that. Those struggles continue to this day, and their issues definitely need support. So I wonder how the school district has reached out to the tribal members or the descendants of such people. What type of partnerships or consultation is happening that demonstrate your respect to honor their people? As an educator, this is great. I love that you want to honor, because, excuse me, I also would like to know how truthful histories of Indigenous peoples of Pennsylvania area are being included in the curriculum, because I'm in curriculum and instruction, so I work with that. Okay, last couple of points here. It is important to include how the colonization of the United States is very painful because of the genocide and land theft that occurred and continues to occur throughout US policies. These histories also play an important role when understanding the contemporary context and issues that Indigenous nations face today. So I want to know how the school district wants to demonstrate and honor the respect for Indigenous nations by being accountable to those people and, as Indigenous people. One way to do that is by standing in solidarity with us in our ongoing efforts for equity and justice, by providing an education that is multicultural and inclusive of various perspectives and ways of knowing the world. So in the end, I support the removal of the school district mascot, Red Raiders, And I'm here to support in any way I can in educating about our communities and our peoples. So thank you, I appreciate your listening.
May we have your name, please?
I'm Holly Anderson Colago,
Would you spell your last name?
K-U-L-A-G-O.
Thank you very much.
Any others that would like to address the board this evening?
Take this off. So my colleague said pretty much what I was going to say, but that's great. My name is Tracy Peterson, and I'm also a citizen of the Diné Nation in Northeastern Arizona, previously at the University of Iowa. I was recruited to Penn State. More recently, purchased a brand new house over in Pleasant Gap. You know, my children will be raised here in this community. And this is not new for me as a person who has encountered, mascot, schools that have, brought this on before. We looked at struggles, the University of Iowa, classic case, right? As students at that university, we endured all the racial slurs, all the window pinnings, all the things that in, that whole idea of team spirit. 3 Native Americans at a large PWI suffered this, these acts of team spirit, left and right. And it took our voices, 3 Native Americans, to gather more students, more people to support that cause of changing the policy that the University of Iowa took to stop playing schools that had American Indian mascots. It was announced, it was successful, and so with that little process, that changed the whole Big Ten, right? And that went as far as us going to North Dakota, speaking to the council, the leadership of the University of North Dakota, having the chancellor, having the president, the system schools present and explaining, why this is detrimental. I'm not going to recite all the research. The research is out there. And you guys will be getting a series of emails from myself and others to the school board email address that will share these articles with you guys. So it holds yourselves accountable in reading that, because you guys are the voice of the community, and that's why you sit in these positions. And the thing is, when you read these articles, one of the big things that you have to do is open your mind. Look at what it's saying, how disparaging, how it creates division. When the Bellefonte, the alumni came to, ask me to speak and to meet with them, we met online. That was great. And I applaud what they're doing as alumnus. A lot of them do not identify, well, I don't think any of them identify as being indigenous, right? And the thing about that, it brings more power to this community, because it shows what the Bellefonte community has done. You guys graduated a number of individuals who have gone out, got their higher education, degrees, and have come back and made that realization. There was a woman here that spoke on, I think it was July 14th, who said, and she claimed to have South American indigenous identity. Again, I'm not here to say who's Native and who's not Native. My point was in that, recordings, and I went over all the recordings and shared them nationwide with individuals to hear what people are saying, right? Because this is one of many school districts that is now on the map. You guys have to understand that the Youth Leadership Council of Pennsylvania has identified Bellefonte, the community of Bellefonte School District, as a place that they are going to be coming to next to change these mascots, right? And it's non-Native youth that understand that is what it's, how detrimental and how bad this is. And the other thing I was going to point out is that in terms of, this point of changing, helping the University of North Dakota change from the Fighting Sioux to now, their new mascot, there are organizations out there, and I think it was pointed out in that last meeting as well, that there are grants. The Nike N7 generation will assist the Bellefonte School District. It takes leadership like yourself to say, we're done with this. We can seek funding to help us change this and make this, this community better. I chose the community of Pleasant Gap because of its location at Penn State, because of what it had. I'm an avid fisherman. I love Fisherman's Paradise, I'll tell you that. So it's, it's a lot, it's a great thing. It's a big change from Iowa. And I was not expecting what I saw when I pulled in to the community, these white signs. It brought back these vivid memories of when we were at the University of Iowa, and even worse, when we went to the University of Illinois for different things, I'm here as a father, I'm here as a student, I serve as the director of student transitions in pre-college programs in the College of Engineering at Penn State University. And there, has been discussion about this. There are diversity committees that have formed at the university that are looking specifically at this issue, right? Because it also affects individuals in the state college community. So you think that this is not an isolated incident. This is widespread. So, again, my name is Tracy Peterson, and I'm a community member. I just paid my taxes in Center County. And so I'm here to stay for as long as Penn State will have me. And you guys can use me as a resource. I'm searchable at Penn State University. And there's quite a few community members that have reached out to myself and doing some education. Holly is here. My wife is also a Native American professor in the school or the College of Engineering. Also has great resources, in that health disparity aspect. So, we're here as a resource. Use us to educate teachers, create curriculum, develop presentations. That's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any others that'd like to address the board this evening, virtually or otherwise? Welcome to 5 minutes.
My name is Tim Gardner. I was born and raised in Pleasant Gap, nice little town. I got no college degree. I got no military background, but I do have a history of Native Americans on both sides of my family. And we lost the native tongue, which is a sad thing. But that has nothing to do with what's going on here. I grew up in this town, went to this school. My siblings went to this school. My parents, they didn't make it to high school, but they've made it through elementary. My kids have all gone here. I have a senior here right now. She's, one, pissed off because we're not going to have sports, possibly. Two, this Native American thing is just, it has nothing to do with the history of the Indians, other than the fact that they brought it on in 1936. Everybody loved it. Everybody used it. I'm damn proud of it, and I think most of the Bellefonte people are. I don't see the issues of changing, wasting time, wasting money, wasting our past lives. I got 50 plus years in this school district. My parents have 80 plus years. I don't think anybody ever committed suicide over an Indian. I don't think anybody got racist. All that shit started 10 years ago. I don't see where we're going with this. And I know most of you are my age or younger, especially you. I know Donna personally. I know Judy personally. I can't believe this has gone this long, really. It's you people are supposed to have all kind of important things to be talking about, as I seen on your agenda. But you don't seem to be too concerned about that. You're more concerned about our mascot. I just went through this stuff a couple years ago with my daughter and her travel ball team with this middle school. Wearing Hailstorm. It said, "Hail yeah" on it. And then it had a verse on the back of the t-shirts. Summer Garmin and the director or the superintendent at the time made such a big deal about it, they had to have a police officer at our public meeting because some of the parents wanted to talk. They were allowing children in this school to wear t-shirts in the hall because they had a play. And it had The Walking Dead with a gun to his head. And our daughters weren't allowed to wear "Hail yeah." And the reason why they got it, they had a saying on the back because they worked for it. So I don't understand the thinking and the common sense of either you people or the school itself anymore. This nicety nice world is just getting way out of hand. And the last thing we needed was to take the paddles out of the schools, but that's where all the problems started, I feel. I don't know what else to tell you. I think it's ridiculous. We got ball fields that look like crap. We're one of the top girls softball teams in this district or this state. We probably could have won the states this year if we'd have played. Our ball field looks like a church elementary school or a church ball field. Where's the budget for that? Why aren't you people working on that? Working on stuff that really means something for this school district. Not Arizona, not Minnesota, not Delaware. We understand the Native Americans got screwed the whole way through this country. And they're still getting it. So you want to talk racism, they probably had it the worst. But if we're going to talk school district, let's talk school district. Let's talk taxpayers. The taxpayers are getting pissed about the crap that's not being done. And I could stand here all night, but that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others that'd like to address the board? Anything online, Mr. Knapp?
I'm not seeing any raised hands at this time.
All right, thank you. With that, we'll move into presentations. We have a presentation on our facilities plan with Hunt Architects for this evening.
Just speaking up loud, Greg Barr with Hunt Engineers, professional engineer with 25 years of school experience, vice president with the firm. I'm going to first say it's nice to be in front of an audience in person because
For the sake of everybody listening, they can't get your audio, so if you could do the microphone, I'd appreciate it. No, verbatim now, just what you said.
What's that?
Verbatim, just what you said.
Yeah. So I'm Greg Barr from Hunt Engineers. I'm a professional engineer. I'm the vice president of the firm. And I was just starting to say that it's nice to be in front of live people for the first time. I think, John, we were here in February, right? That was it. And then between February and now, it literally was a video screen. And we got to see John's face every time he talked. He popped up on the screen in front of us, which is, it was useful. We got through what we need to. Just quickly, next slide, the agenda. So we really broke this down into 3 parts. That was the condition of the facilities as they are today, the needs and the things that were deficient within those facilities, the idea of making those facilities more equitable and equal to each other and the ability to provide education for students. And then the last part really was a process of gaining information from your community through a series of podcasts and community outreach through RIT and online because we couldn't do public meetings. And then the last was working with the facilities committee to basically put up a series of options in which we talked through. And we would just like to kind of go through that process. And then Mike will actually tell you where we landed with this point with no decisions made yet, obviously, but certainly whittled down some options to have more discussion with the district. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over.
Good evening, everyone. Mike Jones, project manager, architect with Hunt. We also have Kate Doyle, architect, and Darren Rathbun, principal in the firm with us. They might chime in here. But some of the highlights for the assessment, we'll just get right into it. I mean, I think the goal was really to give the board an update on everything. So we'll try to be quick. There's a lot of information, but we'll go through it here. So the highlights for Bellefonte, you know, walking through the buildings, these are the things that we saw, you know, pictures of old outdated materials really throughout the building. The exterior, you know, there's not an accessible route there. There's no elevator. That was a big concern. I'm sure you've heard some of this before, and the HVAC system is really outdated. You know, there's a lot of needs for climate control there. That shows the mechanical, electrical technology. We did have some technology in each building that we recommended as upgrades, and they're kind of consistent throughout each building. You know, it's upgrading your wireless, upgrading your data network. That stuff's always evolving. So that is included in the report. We'll highlight some of the others for each building. So Benner here, aged flooring throughout, aged materials again. There's some outdated roofing there. There's really a lack of ADA sink areas or within the classrooms or ADA toilet rooms throughout the building. HVAC system, again, needs a wholesale replacement. That's at the end of its life. And there was a note for secure entrance there at that building. There's not one now. Well, there's a little one, but it could be upgraded. Okay, Pleasant Gap highlights there. We saw some exit width issues. And mainly in the original building. There's a wood deck there. That portion of the building that's original really seemed the most outdated, needed the most work. You can see later on, we recommend that area just gets replaced. There's ADA in the library specifically, some toilet room upgrades throughout. And again, the same thing with the HVAC. Really, those three buildings that we just said HVAC-wise are pretty consistent, where all of the mechanical units in there are outdated and, you know, have reached the end of their life. Marion Walker, some highlights there. There are some fire rating issues there with doors, corridors, and all of the three previous buildings have that as well. But just mentioning that Marion Walker had some of that. There was some exit width issues there, again, in that back original building going back towards the art room. Those hallways are very narrow and the doors swing out. We noted that as an issue. Minimal ADA upgrades, you know, some of the grab bars and things, they're in pretty good shape ADA there. Roof replacement is a need, and some rooftop unit replacement, HVAC wise, but nothing like the other three buildings. That summarizes that was a pretty quick rundown of what we found of those buildings. So, you know, just to note, we have included all of that in a packet. So, you know, that is on the agenda. I think the public has it, the board members have it. So feel free to read through and send us any comments on your questions there. Then when we looked at equity, you know, and community comments and needed building improvements, this is where we started hearing from the faculty. We met with the principals. We dug up the old things that we've heard. You know, Britt helped us get old answers to some of the questions that were already posted from the community. So we've really started summarizing all of those in this slide here. So when we talk about equity and more educational space planning, that would be the next step as we look at the condition of your buildings, and then we start talking about maybe the educational spaces and how they lack in that department. So right off the bat, Bellefonte, there's smaller classrooms there, we noticed. Unlike any of the other four buildings, they have 660 square foot classrooms, which is well below the modern day recommendation for a classroom. There's really a lack of collaboration, storage. We did talk with the principals about the libraries and the STEM spaces really being underutilized, or they're not in a big enough space. They want to incorporate STEM into those areas. As far as the community, we've heard through some of our newer responses and the older responses that people like the historic nature of that building. It's in the historic district. But there is a large amount of unusable space in that building, given that historical character of the building. It's got big walls and it's not as efficient in that way. So Benner, similar things there with the small group space and support spaces, really a lack of special ed in that building. It's kind of it's a smaller building and they are really utilizing that building to its full capability, it seems. Even the trailers, they have one of the trailers set up as a library. So we recommend that gets updated and a new library, maybe include some STEM in that space. There is a bus traffic issue there. And the main thing, I think, is the multi-purpose room. There's really a lot going in that space. We heard a lot about that from community, from the principal, staff, that is just a challenge to do gym, cafeteria, assemblies, everything in the same spot. Community-wise, it is preferred. We heard from all of the 4 buildings that the community likes their buildings, the small school, community center type atmosphere. So we wanted to share that with you. Pleasant Gap, again, we had the same multi-purpose room challenge there. The library, we mentioned that in the ADA too, but really as far as an educational space area, it's not efficient. There's some noise concerns going on with the adjacent classrooms. It's not an enclosed library. Small classrooms there. There were a few, not anything like Bellefonte Elementary, but there were a few that are under that recommended capacity for classrooms. Collaborative space again in STEM, and preferred the center of the community again there at Pleasant Gap. Okay, then Marion Walker. We know we've got the temp trailers, also got the temp trailers we mentioned at Benner, but Marion Walker has those. They did want to include some STEM again in the library. The library is good there, but I think there's a portion of it that could be reused and made into a STEM area, maybe a small group work area. There was a lack of special ed spaces that we heard from the principals and staff. And even that gym is a little bigger, but they do have challenges there with having the gym alongside the cafeteria with a closed partition. Really, we heard that doesn't really work either. So, we're looking for some recommendations there. And this is the most updated building, but, the general community feedback was they still have needs there at that building, even though they are updated. There's still things to make it last and invest in that building, make it last 20, 30 years down the road. Okay, so then into the options and more of what they look like as far as cost, we can start to explain those. So option 1 coming up next. This is basically all of the assessment highlights that we just looked at in that first part. Doesn't include any equity, no operational savings with this option 1. So it's really just buildings as is. Here's what the cost would be in our estimates to upgrade them to be to code and up to current standards. And that cost is hard to read there, but it's about, okay. We were at like almost 34 million construction cost, 40.6 project cost. And then we looked at option 2 coming up next, which is building in the equity. So really, I think option 1 is where you left off with your previous study. That was right around what they had come up with as far as the cost. And we were hired to really look at the educational space and the equity throughout the buildings. So this is what we incorporated in option 2. And option 2, it considers the community feedback, all of the things we just talked about, and really trying to look at overall building, how they flow, making sure there's adequate square foot per student, which we included some of the charts here. I don't think we need to get into this too much. There's a bunch of charts in the actual packet. And if you have any questions on that, we can answer those. This chart is good here. The different colors are classrooms are blue, pink is support, the yellow is specials. But you can see the inner ring is what was existing. The outer is proposed with option 2. So the thing that stands out here is that Benner, you saw, was like a 4% for support spaces. But going forward, we've got a plan in there, you know, to increase that with adding on to the building. We're adding a library, different things there, which is all in the report. And there's a total cost there for option 2 to be totally equity throughout all program spaces, educational spaces. We're at about 70.9 million. So that's kind of our baseline for updating the buildings and providing the equity. So that took the most amount of time to get through option 1 and 2. And then we've sat down with the facilities committee and kind of brainstormed different options. We did recently present these upcoming options, options 3 to 6, which we'll run through. We have a sheet for each option here. You know, I think the main reason for this is looking at the 70.9 and then maybe realizing if that doesn't fit within the district's finances, then here are some options that could help that. Option 3, closing Bellefonte. That really, the economy of scale to build a new building for less than it is to renovate it. That's the main thing with option 3. So there's a little bit of savings, you know, that building is still going to be pretty inefficient given its character. Sorry, not efficient square footage. I mean, that's what that is. We're not saving a lot of square footage there, but it's minimal savings. Option 4, now we're closing Bellefonte and Benner. Combined, realistically, we think that's the next step to look at after Bellefonte. The only thing to note there is Benner is maybe not as easily reused for any redevelopment. So we've listed out, you know, deficiencies and efficiencies for each option. You know, we're not trying to hit on everything here. Just trying to give you the overview. But Marion Walker and Pleasant Gap would remain the same, pretty much just adding on to them to provide the equity in this option. And then we'd have a new building, K through 5, with about 600 students. The thing to note for that is that that amount of students is a very efficient building size. So that means you have around 600 students. You have about 5 to 6 sections of each grade, and it's very easy to, you know, hold those activities that you need to as far as the kitchen. You have one kitchen, one cafeteria, you cycle 200 kids through with 3 lunch periods. So that's kind of like the efficient size that we've, you know, learned through our experience does have some efficiencies. And it is in the numbers. You'll see, you know, some of the square footage is in the numbers and in the costs that actually show that it is efficient. In option 5, now we took it a step further to close Bellefonte, Benner, and Pleasant Gap, Marion Walker to remain basically as is, and you know, provide what's needed there for equity. This is a high, you know, you get into a high transportation impact here. We didn't analyze any of that yet. We could down the road, or the district could, but I think the biggest thing here is now we're getting kind of too big for that efficiency. I mean, there is some cost savings here because you're closing 3 buildings and you're, you know, building a new one. You're not going to have long-term operational maintenance cost on 3 buildings. But, you know, we would say that this is a non-efficient square footage if you're building a new building to this size. And then option 6. This one, we kind of heard from the facilities committee that this would be the easiest, you know, to sell and talk about, but that's not to be discussed yet. I think we're just presenting. So closing Bellefonte, Benner, and Pleasant Gap on this one, and then increasing the enrollment on Marion Walker, adding on to Marion Walker. So you basically have 2 equal buildings in the district, 2 equal buildings of around 600 students to provide that maximum efficiency within each building is what option 6 is. And ultimately that does provide you the most savings as far as the cost wise also. The final sheets kind of have just a rundown of the cost savings. That's more detailed there, but I think the final sheet will show you the next slide there, kind of where we were at with each option. So you see the option 1 and 2 are combined to that 70.9. And you see option 3 just for closing Bellefonte, 4 Bellefonte and Benner, 5 all 3, and then 6 all 3 plus adding on to Marion Walker. And you can see those associated costs here. So a lot of information there. But, you know, I think that was the update you were looking for, right, John?
Yeah, the purpose really is just bring the information to the board. Let's start having a conversation about any questions that anybody has on any part of that. Hoping that we can get some questions and answers going about how you came about some of these decisions, you know, how realistic some of the costs are, that sort of thing. So if anybody has any questions, now's the chance.
We talk about the savings over what period of time?
Yeah, I mean, really the operational and utility cost savings, that's at the bottom of this sheet here. So savings compared to option 2, that's a yearly savings right there, what we were projecting. The savings is really coming from, what I mean saving is more of a deduct in total project cost. So, you know, our option 1 and 2, which is really what we're hearing the community wants, is to upgrade everybody's building and leave them where they are and provide equity. That's that 70.9. So we're saying option 6 is less than that. Not a savings, it's just less. Does that clarify that?
So the savings at the bottom is an ongoing annual savings. The savings initial cost is what we're talking about.
I guess I was referring to an annual ongoing savings.
Yeah, that's at the
reducing the number of buildings.
Right, that's our estimate there at the bottom. So option 6 would be, you know, 321,000 annual savings just on the operational supplies, maintenance, utilities. Does not include any transportation or staffing included in that.
I think too, just to keep the conversation going, so option 1 was sort of considered a non-starter just because the whole purpose to this was to bring equity across the district, and that totally ignores equity. It's just bringing the buildings up to more current standards. So, and that's fairly consistent with the previous studies we've had done as far as price and scope. And option 2, Ken was not very happy about, as you can imagine. So we're kind of looked at that as, and again, based on community feedback, I don't think a single building is supported anywhere in this community. Nobody wants it. All the feedback we've gotten has been against that. So, so that's considering all 4 buildings remaining where they are, but just being brought up to speed for both the buildings and educational equity across the district. So those are kind of the 2 ends of the spectrum. And then we're trying to find some happy medium in between there, both that can be financially attainable, you know, certainly not in the near future, given our current environment, but at some point in the future, we have talked about bringing in another financial analyst to see what our financing options are, what that might look like time frame wise. But we really need to come up to ultimately a path forward for the district that the community will support and stand behind, that the district will support and stand behind because it brings equity across our elementary program. So that's the goal. It's up to us to help steer that discussion and give these guys some direction on where we want them to proceed next. We've met, I think the facility committee has met 2 or 3 times. We've reported that back to the board. We've met with the principals quite a bit, at least 2 or 3 times. I didn't see any of the, in your report, I noticed that you took out some of what equity looks like in the buildings. So
the floor plan?
The floor plan of what that looks like, yeah.
Yeah, and those are all in the packet.
Yeah, it just wasn't up there, so I just wanted to
Yeah.
make sure that everybody knew that. And that is.
Yeah,
on the public
definitely, you
side.
know, those equity type things that we were talking about, the multi-purpose rooms and the libraries, definitely take a look at those floor plans, because that's where we're basically taking the library out of the trailer, getting rid of the trailers and putting the library in addition, you know, so you'll see that on the floor plan and it'll start to make sense about what each building's gonna be getting, you know, as far as equity.
So I think the next step for getting the board information is going to be, Ken is going to bring someone in to help talk to the board about what our financing options are, so we know what we can support financially. It's going to be difficult now, but certainly it's something we need to look at, and he said that, you know, he can bring him in anytime and we'll do that for us, so.
What are your expectations of the board making the decision?
Well, we need to give them a path, we need to reduce it down some more. I'd like to get it down to a couple options that we can then debate those couple options and make a decision, whether that comes in a month or two or three. It comes when it comes, when we're ready.
Along with the discussion regarding financing, we need to know when we can actually do that. So I assume that'll all come out whenever we have that financial advisor come in.
I would
It's
think
at
so.
least, right now with the economic conditions, it's probably minimum 2 years, probably more likely 3 to 4, depending on how fast we hopefully can snap back.
So at 3 to 4, you can start the architectural process prior to that. Am I correct on that? We still have money set aside for that?
We have 2 million approximately. We'll be able to probably borrow a few $1 million more the longer this goes, because most of the debt's paid off in 2026. We have 2 balloon payments and it get done in 2028. So we'll be close to looking at that financing, decide whether it be optimal to even wait 2 more years at that point or pull the plug now or at that point. And that's going to depend on rates.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is prevailing wages don't go down typically. So that piece of the pie comes into the equation. But I think just for the sake of finding what the community will support, what the board and the district can support, and making the decision on the path forward so that we can then get into all the other aspects of the perfect timing for the architectural process so that we are, I hate to use the word shovel ready when the finances are available, but that's been the goal all along.
Has the construction committee met after this has been put together? Have they seen these numbers?
Yes.
And what was there? And were there any comments?
Well, we check, we're not public meetings, so we can't really reduce options. That's up to the board to do. I think the only thing I could safely say was we're not in favor of option 1. Is that a fair assessment? Because it doesn't bring equity in, and that's the whole purpose.
Right.
And they understand that option 2 is probably not realistic because of the price. So, and that's why I'm saying we're setting that as the bookends. I wouldn't want to say anything to misrepresent anything beyond that. There were pros and cons to each option. That's sort of what we need to work on.
I'm not seeing the answer here right now. That's just pretty obvious.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 to 6, it's somewhere in there. There's some happy ground somewhere in 3 to 6. So we need to find out what information out of there do we not see yet that we can ask for? What is the next step? I think one important piece is really to get the financial piece in here so we know what we're capable of doing and when we can do it. And we've had that conversation. So I think Ken just needs a little bit more guidance as to say when, or if we're ready for that, he can do that. If there's other information that we'd like to see, that's why we're having the conversation.
Because the number we were looking at initially was closer to what option one is, correct? I'm not mistaken with that. We were around that 34 million or something like that.
Right, but that was just to bring the buildings up without.
Right, I understand that, but I'm
Yeah.
saying, like, I remember in these conversations that we've had, we've been saying we have about 34 million to put into this project.
Right.
So we're a far away from 52, which I'm not sure you don't have a heart attack from the 70, but 52 is, it's still, I mean, I'm anxious to see what the financial folks have to
Yeah,
say.
it's certainly, and I think delaying a year or two in the actual architectural side of it, like Ken said, it can't hurt us because it just means that more debt is paid off and we're in a better position.
But our reserve funds and those things, our interest kind of might go up as well too, right? That
Yeah.
makes costs go up.
Tell me what interest will be 2 years
Yeah.
from now, I'll make
Yeah,
a lot
that's
of
true.
money.
But also considering the savings of the operational cost over the years, after how many years then would it be? I don't know, I'm not explaining myself well, but it would be beneficial. Where you end up like at a wash.
There's also, I don't think it closes the gap enough, but there's also a train of thought that now is the time to go out for money because of the rates.
So Ken, do you think we could do that sometime in, late September or early September?
I can bring them in. The problem is with the unknown with the economy right now, it makes it all, I mean, it's bad enough when things are consistent, the market is fluctuating. Right now, I'm not so sure how we'll brand out with the economic stability of the district under the COVID issues. My revenue is going to be down. Expenses probably are up some. Obviously, we spent $300,000 to $400,000 on COVID products. Got a little over 200,000 in grants, so there's additional money. Plus, I mean, we're going to have a lot more when school starts with additional salaries, time, and things like that with people. So I don't know if it'd be a good time or not. I mean, we obviously could get a preliminary from them and see what they think. That can't hurt. Doesn't cost us anything. They'll do it for free for us. And then when we get closer to time, obviously, is when you really want to start getting more into the nitty gritty and looking at the details. But I can talk to them and see what they think. I guess they would probably know better than I do.
And I think a preliminary is all we're looking for at this point. Not
Yeah, I can ask them for a preliminary in September, October, whatever.
sooner the better if they're able.
I doubt they're doing very many bond issues right now, so they probably have some time.
I think that's probably accurate.
So I will say this, if option 2 at 70.9 is off the table, so is option 3 at 70.5. And 4 is getting real close there. But what my comment generally is, within the options, there are options. Within option 3, 4, 5, it's 3, 4, and 5 in particular. There are options with 3 and 4 specifically. There are options within those options. So I think we need to keep our minds open to perhaps manipulate, massage this thing a little bit to actually fit our budget.
Well, what do you, so if you don't think we can get option 6 down to our budget, how do we get option 3 and 4? Tell me, what are you thinking as an option?
Well, you have a combined elementaries. You can combine elementaries and not touch Marion Walker and perhaps help Pleasant Gap. So you could combine Bellefonte and Benner.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it all at once. It'd be a phased situation. We looked at that when I think the cost of the new build was what, 34, 35 million or something like that. So when you were switching that.
Yeah, we could find that.
But I'm looking at, we don't even have Marion Walker paid for at this point for what we borrowed. And they have a really nice facility as it is right now. For me to ask people outside of that community to contribute and not do a better job on our other 3 is a hard sell for me.
I don't think that's what anybody was asking.
Well, but if you're putting almost 8.9 million into Marion Walker under option 4. And that's a significant amount of money. So
phasing doesn't.
you wanted comments, I'm just giving you comments.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. That's what we need to do. So I'm just trying to understand them, so we can develop a path forward from here. So as far as total cost of the project, phasing doesn't really change. If anything, it increases the cost. So we're looking at total cost to bring equity to the district. So I think no matter what we do, we would probably have to phase, but that's going to depend on what the preliminary financial looks like. I don't think we've really talked about a rough rendering, especially given the current economic environment. So that's out. So I guess what I'm looking for, if you have an idea of what options within those options would be. So we've gone through closing one school and keeping the other 3, closing 2 schools and keeping the other 2, closing 3 schools. So I'm trying to figure out what different scenario we could ask Hunt to look at to try to get those closer to the budget. That's what you were thinking.
I'm not sure I'm prepared at this point to get a bunch of emails. Because I think we need to see the numbers. And I think we need to then have a frank discussion. Because I think I've made my point very clear from what I've heard in the past and what I've heard tonight. My opinion is we need to put Bellefonte Elementary and Benner together. We own the land, and we need to help Pleasant Gap. I can't be any clearer than that.
Okay, so you're talking about a 3-building scenario.
Yep.
So we're asking, in that 3-building scenario, is there anything that we can do to maintain the educational equity but lower the cost?
Yeah, and I think I can speak a little bit to that. We have all of those assessment items in our BCS system that I think some of you saw when we proposed, and the facilities committee has seen that, but that is all able to be prioritized. So that's really, I think, what he's getting at is, we've got all this stuff to bring it up to code, bring it up to standards. He's questioning, is that really all needed at Marion Walker?
I'm not even talking about
nobody's
Marion
prioritized that, and Pleasant Gap or any building. Is it really required or needed? And that's something that the district has to prioritize. We haven't prioritized anything. All of it's included. So that would be a next step for us. If you wanted to dig into that option 4, is it more, and start prioritizing some of those upgrades, we would definitely be willing to do that with, the team here.
And as far as the use of Benner, it's been brought to my attention that we need a new admin building. And I think that would probably fit that bill. When you're parking out there, there's office space. It's a relatively secure building. It's certainly better than what we have now.
There would be some significant renovations that would have to occur.
There'll be some, but I think that they could certainly live under that better than their current conditions.
Yeah, right.
So then the next question is, at what point, again, the current environment has really hampered a major part of this process, which was community engagement and live community meetings to have these discussions to see, again, what the community will support. Maybe that's their preferred option, maybe it's not. But we need to hear those voices as well. So I don't know if maybe we can start thinking about, given the current limitation, how we can do that. Is it something that we do with a mailing with options? Is it something that we do in some outdoor venue where we can have more people? I don't know. Just asking to brainstorm a little how we can start bringing the community into this. We want to bring it to the board first to see what your thinking was. We certainly need to hear from all stakeholders. But if we're going to start honing in on 1 or 2 options as close this building and keep that building kind of thing, I think that's where we really need to bring the community along with us, because we can have all the best ideas in the world here, but if If they're not supported in the community, we shouldn't be doing
But the financial discussion has to be before
it.
that.
Yeah.
Of course, they want to know numbers as do we.
Mhm. So Ken, if you can look into preliminary, see what we can do there. And I guess I would ask the architects if you can brainstorm a way that you would feel comfortable engaging the community at this point, and see what kind of feedback we can get again now that we have these options out and it's been made public.
Okay.
Does that represent what everybody's concerned about, or is there anything else we need to add to that? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. Does that give you guys enough direction to keep things moving?
I believe so. Do you guys have anything else?
Okay, thank you for long enduring the environment that we live in and being patient with it also.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll move to item 302, which is possible athletic proposed plan.
Basically, what you have before you, and the thing is, it's a 16-page document, but most of it's the appendix based on the information that's found within the first 10 pages. But basically, what it does is it took our phase 4 of athletics and broke it down a little bit more specific. And with what we're going to do with transportation and stuff like that, it now matches what the school's doing. So we didn't address those issues in the first part because we weren't going anywhere because it was summer. And we were just addressing those. So we're staying at phase 4. I know that you guys probably know that we've now, our new start date is August 24th for practices and stuff. And that phase 4 practices in the first plan that I did is basically what we're doing now. And this document that you have before it goes through and just verifies the different transportation things and matches up with the plan that you already approved for the school district. So that's a quick summary of anything.
If we have sports, or I'm under the assumption we will not have many people sitting in the stands.
At this point, no.
Are we going to be able to watch those games on YouTube Live?
I am not the tech expert in this thing, but I do have our IT department, and we have ordered the software program in order to stream it live and put it on YouTube. And we're looking into the different camera things and how we're going to do that. Eric tried the software program. We were up at the stadium the other day. No, it was last week.
The answer is yes, we're gonna have
Yeah.
something.
There you go. I can't remember, but I can't remember the software thing, but yep, we did that. I actually got the purchase order today.
Have we looked at CNET coverage? Is that something CNET could cover? I mean, instead of
They
buying a
could
bunch
cover
of,
some of it. We'd have to pay for the additional coverage.
I just mean compared to buying equipment and having people there to.
Well, the equipment will last over years, so it's better for us to buy the equipment. It's a few $1,000s. I don't think it's any more than 8 to 10 for 2 or 3 versions. We'd have one for the stadium, one for the gym, maybe something we can move down to the middle school as well. So we're looking at that, and it also can be obviously used other places as well. So it would probably be cheaper to get the equipment ourselves. But we thought of that initially.
And we can do graduation and stuff like that with this. And I could quite possibly have 4 events going on at the same time. So
That's what I was wondering about, whether or not there would be coverage for multiple sports.
We'll try our best.
And multiple venues.
In multiple venues. And that wouldn't just be just football. I have a football player, but I mean, there's a lot of other sports that are out there.
I'm not gonna volunteer to run the cross-country route.
Put a GoPro on somebody's head.
Just really saying that, I might be able to get the AT cart and follow, but we'll try. We're gonna try. Like if we can't do the camera, that we talked about Facebook Live for the finishes, for the cross country meets and stuff like that, and different things that we could add in that would help cover at least getting all of them live at one point or another.
And PIAA is making in 2 weeks, or what other, will we still be making some determination about?
August 21st is the date that we were given. I don't know if that date will stand. We're going through, I have everybody practicing as if there is going to be a season. And we're keeping that optimistic.
As a side note, the superintendents and the ADs from the Mountain Lake have met last week and then again this week virtually. And one of the concerns that both the superintendents and the ADs shared is that our bands and cheerleaders should be able to participate. So I
That
think
was my
we've come,
question.
I think we've come to a pretty much an understanding that to stay under the 250, we will have our band at our home events, our cheerleaders at our home events, and they will as well. So that gives, I mean, the excitement about being those things sometimes is traveling, but at least we will give them a venue to be able to participate in things. So I think the
Absolutely
gentleman's
have to.
agreement has been that we will have our band and our cheerleaders at our home events.
We were actually in an AD meeting on Thursday and we were talking about that and we all agreed that that's what was going to happen as a league. And then on Thursday night, when the new regs were released with the recommendation of, January 1st, it did say in there in the bottom things now that band and cheerleaders were counted in the 250. So as of last Thursday night, they were now allowed. And so our vote, we voted before that because that's how we believe as a group that they need to be included. But now it's written on the governor's rule that band and cheerleaders are allowed. So they will be there. They were practicing, with the intention of being there. Because we were hoping things would change, because quite honestly, they did change.
That's unsurprising to me because I figured there were some pretty cranky cheerleading and band parents across the state that people were hearing from.
And rightly so.
Have there been discussions at either, with either group about potential for some sports going forward and other sports not going forward?
We as a league discussed that, like, golf. We didn't, the proposal we were going to make to our superintendents was that we start golf on time, because when you get into end of September and October, there's not really many golf courses that I know of that have lights. Although they do have those glow balls. But nonetheless, we were asking, we were thinking that, and some of our league members have tennis, and we were thinking that could go. And some other sports that might be of moderate risk or high risk would probably wait and do the delay as suggested. But that was all null and void at that point, and we're starting on September 24th. So right now, the superintendents and the athletic directors will meet again on August 24th after the August 21st announcement. And then it'll be decided at that point in time what we're going to do with the schedules and stuff. Other leagues are already trying to figure that out, and maybe we'll just stay with the league schedule and revamp everything and maybe have some non-league games, or just stay with the league so we're consistently playing the same schools with the same kids. Everybody's working right now on different schedules to see how that will affect, because we already have officials, we already have, there's a lot of things there's a lot of moving parts.
You have officials?
Depends on the game and the time at this point. We're moving some back, because we're looking at some of the league games that were canceled because of the new date, and I'll have to get those and stuff, but they're kind of holding off till August 21st. So they're not really committing to anything until we get that new mandate or guideline or recommendation or whatever it is you want to call it. So in other words, my three most common words since March 16th are I don't know. And I don't know how the schedule will look. I don't know, for the most part, I have all the officials that I need at this point, but that could change when the schedule changes, because we are limited in officials. They are a small group, and it's tough to schedule games and stuff, and we're kind of moving forward and fingers crossed and trying to think things out.
The green, yellow, and red that you have in here, does that correspond to the low, medium, and high transmission or whatever that is in the latest guideline?
Yes.
So
I matched up with the state and the thing. We did, and maybe that was my bad in the first presentation, I did phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what I did with those phases was, I should have just called them stages instead of phases, to not confuse them with the phases of the red, yellow, green. But I did 4 weeks of practices with 2 weeks in between the 2 stages of practices. And now we're just staying in that phase 4, which was ready for competition. So this kind of just takes that stage 4 and then puts some specific down where we had questions last time about how transportation was going to go because we didn't have that information from the transportation companies and stuff like that. So we've taken that and put that into this and how we're going to operate. And again, that remains to be seen, to some degree, because some teams may slide down a couple numbers to fit in a bus. Right now, I don't think I have to do that based on my numbers, but I don't know what those numbers will be when the season rolls around. Because now everybody was rushing to get those physicals in. Now they're kind of thinking, well, now I have to August 24th. August 24th. So August 23rd, I should be probably getting 20, 30, 44. Right now they don't need that.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments?
As a side note, we are working on the venue-specific things in regards to all these plans and how we will set up, how people will come into the stadium that need to be in the stadium and they're taking different sides so we're not crossing and stuff like that, and doing seats, assigned seats and stuff like that for the band members. And the cheerleaders always cheer on the sideline, on the track, in front of the fans. Well, that puts them too close to visiting teams, so we'll probably move them down a little bit just to make sure we're social distancing and stuff like that. The athletic training room, I'm looking at actually having it outside because I can't have more than 25 people inside. So if I put it up at the stadium and put a tent up and put a table out, we will do taping and things. So we're all working through that, and I'll have them ready as soon as possible, I guess. But I'm trying to take all of the thoughts and processes into consideration. There's one positive thing out of all of this that I can say in the years that I've been doing this job. We actually meet as an athletic staff. We did every week during the school year, and we do it every other week during the summer with COVID and with the Zoom. And that, quite honestly, is the most times that I've ever had the experience of meeting with all of our athletic staff at all one time. So they're all getting the input and stuff like that into what we're doing and coming up with different ideas that maybe I didn't think of. So I really need to give them a round of applause and a thank you, because they're willing to take time out of their summer to meet with me on Monday nights at 7 o'clock. And just like when I present here, I'm kind of boring on Zoom, but really funny in person one-on-one.
Much better.
So, and the other positive thing is the state banners are finally done after 6 months and stuff like that, so they should be coming in shortly. So they'll be up in the gym hopefully, and that pretty much brings you up to date on what we've been doing. Thank you very much. Thank you for everything that you do. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hang in there.
All right, next is real estate tax penalty waiver discussion or presentation with Mr. Bean.
Yes, the state did pass a act that allows a school district to change their discount period and their penalty period. Now, currently, the way it operates for us is we kind of already have that built into a degree. Since our tax bills go out August 1st, not July 1st, our discount period runs August 1st till September 30th. Our face period runs October through the end of November. And then in December, we have our 10% penalty if you don't pay it by the end of November. And if you pay it by the end of December, it's 10% penalty. And we turn it over to the county for delinquent collection after that. The bill allows us to change that. If we would change anything, I would recommend we only change the penalty and either waive that or or not, but since we already extended discount period to September 30th, as opposed to most districts. Now, if we would waive that, that's about $50,000 in years past that we won't get. It wasn't budgeted that way. It was budgeted like we would normally get that. But if we waive that, it would probably cost at least 50 grand, maybe a little bit more. Now, we do have the ability, if the board would approve it on a larger basis, to do it kind of on a case-by-case basis, if you would. On rare occasions, maybe 2 or 3 times in 20 years, I've waived something for somebody, and it's been in conjunction with the local tax collector. For instance, a 95-year-old woman just forgot, and she's always paid on time, and she was just getting much older, and we both decided it would be in best interest not to charge her the 10%. We never give anybody the 2% discount, but we at least have them pay in face. Like I said, that's only happened 2 or 3 times in 20 years. So we do have that ability. If we want to do that on a larger scale, I think the board would just have to vote and give me the ability to do that on a larger scale if it would be needed. But that's where we're at with that. That's what the law says. Now, tax bills already went out. This would require an additional mailing by the tax collector. So everybody's aware of that. I did check with State College, Bald Eagle, and Penns Valley. As far as I know, 2 of the 3 got back to me. They are not doing this. One board's going to talk about it, but he indicated that there was nobody brought it up that they were interested in doing it, but they might have a chat about it. So just for comparison.
Well, my concern is that we made sure that we were at 0% this year because of the economics of what's happened. And I never thought we actually balanced the budget on a 10% penalty. So I'm still troubled by the fact that we're perhaps looking at it that way. So I would suggest in the future we eliminate that thought, because we never know in the future. That's a variable. But I'm in favor of having the resolution to eliminate, just keep it at the base for the remainder of the year. I'm just looking at our community. I have no idea how people are doing. 50,000 is quite a bit at the end, which tells me something on a good year.
You have any thoughts on what it might look like if we let it go as a case by case, since that's what other districts seem to be favoring?
I have no idea. We're going in uncharted territory. I don't know. A lot of the taxes come in obviously through bank escrows. That's the majority of it. Sometimes it's older citizens that usually don't have a mortgage or something. A lot of times I think they would be able to pay on time, but we do have installment payments available, set up. If you wanted to look at something maybe as a compromise, we could extend out the installment payments if you'd like. That's an option.
I'm in favor of anything that will help people. So also want to remind the board that this passed unanimously through both the House and the Senate. And the Senate, the governor signed it post haste like grass through a goose. So this thing moved fast. And it was also something that the PSBA was supporting. And so what's happened in the past is when we do not support this kind of thing, it always comes back to hit us somehow. The legislature will, whoever is our representative, sometime in the future, when we want something, they'll say, well, you never actually helped anybody out in the community, even though we gave you the opportunity. They did it with the homestead piece when we did not enact that right away. They forced us into that, which I was okay with because I supported it. But just saying in general, when something passes unanimously, and our constituency hears about it, and we don't provide them this opportunity, just think that we're at fault. I'm okay doing an extension somehow, extending payments. I just think we need to be able to flatten that out.
If the board wants to do this, I don't have a problem, obviously, but it's not that we use that in a typical year to balance the budget. This year, as you know, we were pulling out everything we could think of to get it down to a no tax increase. So that's why it's more critical this year than it would be in any other year. Would be some cushions built in. All those safety measures were pulled trying to get the budget down to a no tax increase.
Wait, what are we talking
The
What are we talking? 10% penalty on not paying tax.
waiving the 10% penalty in December.
The legislature gave us the ability to waive that. Rather than saying it's waived, they gave us the ability to.
Permanently or just for
Yeah, I was
this
gonna
year?
say, at what point do we,
Permanently or for this year, the 10%?
This year.
Just for this year?
We'd waive it for the whole month of December. You could still pay face all the way up to the end of December. Then it would go to collection.
Would there be likelihood that without a penalty, people might wait till the end of December anyway? Like, does that affect anything in terms of budgeting?
It could
or
affect,
when you
it could
collect-
affect cash
collect
flow.
those monies?
It could affect cash flow. I don't know. And again, we've seen some decrease, obviously, in our income tax and some other numbers. That's going to flow more towards coming up in August and September. I'll see more of the effect of that because it is a delay till we get the money on a quarterly basis sometimes.
Is there would you say there's a time, is this a time, how much of a time sensitive issue is this? So do we?
Well, the sooner the better we can let people know, obviously, they can plan when they want to pay their taxes. We'll have to get like I said, a notice out to everybody. Again, it only affects those people that aren't escrowed. I don't know if we have the ability to even pull that out of the system. We might not. I don't control the database, so I'd have to see if we know who's escrowed by a company and who isn't. That could knock down the cost of that mailing, but we would have to do a mailing to let all the tax people know. Now, sometimes we get people confused when we send the installment payments. I've had a few individuals pay their taxes and then pay each of the installment payments. And we've sent it back to them, obviously, but that has happened. So it can get confusing. I know my parents call me every year about that. They said, which one do I pay?
Now, what's the percentage look like that we have to take that, we give the 10% penalty?
I don't know what the percentage of the population is. I just know the dollar amount. We get about 50 grand roughly a year. Could it be more this year? It might not. I don't know. With Penn State football going away, I don't know what kind of effect that, obviously not going to have a good effect economically. So it's hard to tell. I don't know if there'll be layoffs now. A lot of different industries because of that. It could affect things. I just don't know. You would think it would, to what degree, I guess, is the question.
I will say, for those of us who have a hefty tax bill, we take the 2% reduction. So that answers part of your question.
Yeah, we get,
on 10 grand.
September, we get a ton of money in real estate taxes. Obviously, everybody taking advantage of it.
Hey, so we have, you can say something.
I was gonna say, so what is, if we wanted to do this, we would have to then make a motion then to vote on it in a future meeting? What
Well,
would happen?
I mean, we can just sort of do a straw poll here as to what we want to do to figure out what we want to have Ken prepare for us, but anything that we do would happen at the next meeting.
Right.
And that would be enough time, I could let the tax collectors know it's probably coming to prepare for it. Since it's a special mailing, the school district probably should pay for that mailing, not come out of their pocket. They pay for some mailings. We do a flat fee. The board votes on every 4 years, so that's coming up, I think, in a year or two.
I'm guessing
But,
too, if we do a mailing, but it should go to all taxpayers, not just the ones we think.
Yeah, it's almost gonna have to go
Yeah,
to everybody. We can do a bulk mailing on it, at least by tax collector, we could do it. Maybe eliminate those people who are already paid, but since September 30th, 2%, it wouldn't affect those people anyway. So if you vote on to the next meeting, we'd be okay. I would like to know what it is so I can prep for it.
So I guess the three things we've talked about is do nothing, extend the payment ability, payment terms, or waive the 10% penalty for the month of December. Because then it goes to collections, we're out of it anyway.
Yes.
Is it an all or nothing on the percentage?
I'm sorry, what?
Is it an all or nothing on the percentage? Like, is it 10 or 0 or 5?
I'm looking at the law here trying to.
And the way I read it is we have the ability to waive and modify. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Can you hear me?
I have, Ken. What was the question?
He said, what's the question?
In this law, what is it, Act? What's the name of that?
75.
75, yeah, thank you. Act 75, does it give us the ability to reduce the penalty percentage, or are our only two options to have it or eliminate it completely?
I'd have to go back and look at it. It's been a month or so since I prepared something for State College. Did Randy get back to you? I was under the impression, but maybe I'm mistaken, that State College did adopt this.
He told me that State College was not going to do it for now.
Okay, I thought they had, but I know I had prepared the revision, but I'll have to look at this. I don't know off the top of my head if it allows you to do something less than the full boat. I'll send you a text in a minute.
It says waive the penalty for failure, so I don't know if that means we can only waive it or we can reduce it.
That's kind of how I was reading it, was either waive it or keep it.
The way it reads here, I don't know if there's more to it than just a summary or not. Can't believe anybody write a bill that's on the page.
Are we just looking to get thoughts
He,
now?
he's just reading it for a minute to see if we have the
Oh,
ability
okay.
to change the percentage. Like you were
Okay, I
asking.
couldn't hear him.
Yeah, so I guess, and you said the State College is not doing it.
Last I talked to their business manager, he told me it was not on their plans as of the day I asked him. I think I was late last week.
So is it fair to ask, just by a show of hands, how many people would rather see no change versus some sort of a change? So if you're in favor of doing something rather than nothing, raise your hand.
Something instead of nothing?
Yeah, so the
As a waiver.
so you
Oh,
make
okay.
make some kind of a change, we don't know what yet. Okay, so everybody wants to do something. So that brings us down to eliminate it or
Or
extend the payment term or change the percentage. If
Before next meeting, I'll talk to Dr. Etter and make sure what we're allowed to do exactly.
Yes.
It'll be on the board agenda then. That gives me enough to go with the tax fund.
And the thing that we can do that will least muck it up, give your recommendation. Okay?
That's always my recommendation.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I feel the potential for us to do more damage and good potentially, so whatever you recommend.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are we okay with that? All right, thank you, Mr. Beaton. On to 304, second reading of policy with Mrs. Burnford.
So if you recall, we talked about the attendance policy and there needs to be some updates to it. The biggest problem that we have is that it doesn't reflect the state guidelines for compulsory attendance age anymore. So the only change in that policy is the moving from age 8 to age 6. I haven't heard from any of you, but if you do have comments, Leslie has it up there now as well too. Again, I've not changed anything since the last time we talked about it, but it only at this point reflects the age 6. We are just, which is an administrative guideline, not a policy, have talked about, administrators talking about relaxing attendance policies for COVID outbreaks or quarantines and those kind of things. Information will go out to parents about that as well. I'm not sure if it's in the plan, but it certainly has been in a lot of discussion. So that's an administrative guideline. Everything else, again, in this policy that we're suggesting is simply moving the compulsory attendance age from age 8 to age 6 as required by law.
Okay, so if there's no changes before the next meeting, that'll be up for approval by the board. Any questions on that policy 204? Okay, thank you, Mr. Burnford. That will move to approval of minutes. Item 401, it is recommended that the minutes from the regular meeting of July 14th, 2020 be approved as provided on your board doc. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Moving seconded. Any questions or concerns? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item 402 is recommended that the minutes from the special meeting of July 30th, 2020 be approved. A motion for that one.
So
Moved.
Second. Any questions or comments? All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Move into reports with Mr. Steiner on the IU-10.
The IU-10 met on July 23rd at the West Decatur site. This was the first meeting for the new executive director, Dr. Francine Edlund, formerly the assistant superintendent at Holidays Area School District. Very happy to have Dr. Edlund. We were incredibly fortunate to be able to bring her on board. It was the board reorganization meeting. The IU reorganizes in the middle of the year for whatever reason. Dr. Dan Duffy from State College was reelected board president. Ruth Sopp from Oceana Valley was reelected as board vice president. And of course, our own Dr. Scott Eder was reappointed as the IU solicitor. We approved a number of safety plans similar to what we're approving here for our own district. Two additional items. The IU board approved the ESY, Extended School Year Services for our district. This is a pass-through service that the IU provides for the district. I noticed that because I saw my daughter's teacher there. I thought that was interesting. And also the IU board approved the consortium contract between the IU-10 Get More Math licensing. I feel like I spoke about this recently for some reason, but maybe I'm just having deja vu. With 7 member school districts, including Bellefonte. If the schools were to license individually with Get More Math, the rate would be $15 per student. Because all these schools are part of the consortium, the rate was $11.17 per student. Every little bit counts. This group coming together through the IUs collectively saved a total of $12,278 to be part of the consortium. Again, kind of one of those things just to kind of let folks know what the IU is a part of and what the IU does for its members.
Questions for Mr. Steiner? Thank you, Jeff. With that, we'll move on to CPI with Mrs. Weaver and Dr. Badger.
Yes, we met yesterday. We also met a couple weeks ago and did the COVID plan, the safety plan. So that was a special meeting as well to approve that. We went over the secondary goals, and I'm not going to read all of these, but they did talk about their NOPI scores, increasing that to enroll at least 5% of the secondary CPI into the post-secondary, and to enroll 10% of the CPI class of 2021 into the Center Ready program. So those are just some of their goals that they're looking to do for the secondary education. We have a total of 234 students from Bellefonte attending CPI, and they have a total of 451 students from the 3 sending schools. Also, for the first time in quite a few years, we approved a health room paraeducator at CPI. It's a part-time employee, but given the circumstances with COVID, they're now going to have a staff member. We've hired someone, they've hired someone to be a health room paraeducator at CPI. And I think that was it. I've read.
There's a highlight.
Okay.
Mrs. Weaver, do you know if their numbers changed at all with COVID? Their enrollment?
Actually, their enrollment went up for high school students.
Wow.
They're up higher by 20, I think, from last year. It's in that area, but I do know that they're higher this year. So they were pretty excited.
That's interesting.
It's hard to do diesel mechanic virtually.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I know that they are ready for if the district would, or if we would have to go to distance virtual learning. You know, they're setting up things and what it's going to look like, you know, for a lot of the program areas.
Be curious to see what that looks like, how you
Yeah.
can't fix an engine in your living room. You can bring them in one at a time and let them do their assignments, or how do you do that?
I mean, they're going to have to do probably a lot of their classwork, you know, and then hope best that we get back in the classroom quickly. But
They were able to do that for the post-secondary folks, to be able to complete their coursework after that was interrupted with the COVID. So we've already got some experience of students being there through the summer to cut the teeth on it. They've changed some plans on how certainly segregation of people coming in, how attendance is taken, and how transportation, that allowing students to drive themselves there now rather than take the buses. So there's a lot of flexibility built in to what they're doing. They've done a pretty good job up there, it seems, so far.
and they're busing when they get the kids off. It's going to take them a little bit longer than normally because obviously before they all came off the bus, well, now they're going to be dismissing 5 rows at a time. And those per one bus at a time, 5 rows at a time. So they'll go into the school, it's one-way hallways. I mean, they've done a very, very good job with keeping them safe. And like Dr. Badger said, they had opened in June to get the post-secondary back. I mean, they've been doing a great job keeping everybody safe. And if need be, you know, quarantining if there would be a scare, but there wasn't. So.
Interesting times, huh? All right, any other questions? Thank you very much. Legislation with Ms. Smith.
So in Harrisburg, there's both a lot happening, but it all relates to COVID. So my report is kind of thin. As you all may know, Pedro Rivera, our Secretary of Education, will be leaving his position. He will become the president of Thaddeus Stevens College of Technology. He will remain the Secretary of Education until October 1st. The current Deputy Secretary of Post-Education, Secretary Ortega, will step into that position. And personally, I really liked Pedro Rivera. I thought he was an advocate for rural schools particularly, and I always found him really wonderful to work with. Senate Bill 1125, also known as Act 75, was approved on July 23rd, and that is what we just discussed recently. Last week, the Pennsylvania School Board Association met with the House Education Committee to have a panel discussion. And the purpose was for the legislature to listen what it is that school districts need. And the PSBA reported that there seemed to be a genuine desire to listen. The concern was that because the state passed what they refer to as a half budget, that this fall will be consumed with mostly the budget and not much else. So the message from the districts was that we don't necessarily, we're not asking for more money spent, but there were 7 things that we can all advocate for. And this is what they were suggesting that we continue to advocate for. the waiving of many of the educational mandates so that districts can be creative and flexible, and we reap the benefit of that. Granting schools liability protection, of course, charter reform, supporting any bill that has to do with broadband connectivity, school transportation funding reform, postponing the new graduation requirements discussion, and advertising rules reform. So those are the 7 points that PSBA suggested we advocate for that doesn't really cost anything. And finally, registration is open for 2 conferences that some of us have been to and have enjoyed. They're both virtual, unfortunately. The first one is the Advocacy Day on October 8th, and I will attend that one. And the second is the School Leadership Conference on October 14th and 15th. And that one, I believe, is the one that's always held in Harrisburg. Hershey, excuse me. Yeah. And I loved going to that. But last year I learned so much, so I will probably also attend that. And that concludes my report.
They're going to have voting at that also then?
They did.
They
So I
did?
don't know how that's going to happen, but I will look
Well,
into
my
it.
point is, we're supposed to have 2, right?
Yes.
So I think on the next agenda, you need to get that.
Okay.
Whoever else is going to be the other person.
Well,
It won't be me.
it won't be you.
No. Yes, someone else.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, thank you. I have no report this evening. Anything I would have said was consumed in the Hunt report and Mrs. Barnard's report. So for that, Mrs. Barnard.
I asked Karen to come up and talk a little bit about, we talked just briefly earlier. I had put a brief summary of where we are with reopening our schools. We continue to work around the clock, trying to face every challenge we possibly can with the ever-changing information that we get from Harrisburg. Somebody had mentioned here earlier that about the yellow, green, red designation. I was in a superintendent Zoom across the state yesterday, I believe, and I feel like they've abandoned, even though it's in our plan, this red, yellow, green designation for a more low transmission of COVID, moderate transmission of COVID, and based on county statistics, and substantial transmission of COVID. So the red, yellow, green is still in our plan. We'll still equate those, as somebody had mentioned here, but we've kind of abandoned those colors for now. But Mrs. Krish has more updates as well.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay. So just following up on that, determining instructional models is the new page that was put out yesterday with these three different scenarios. And so the charts they're going to be putting out every Friday, which you can access through the PDE website, and I think probably on the Department of Health as well. And you get some numbers of cases in the county. And this, it uses measurements from the White House Coronavirus Task Force, identifies thresholds representing low, moderate, or substantial community transmission, and it corresponds to instructional models recommended by the Departments of Health and Education. So it looks like Fridays are when they'll come out, and they're a 7-day reporting, and then there's a chart that goes along with it. If there's less than 10 new cases in the county, you're considered automatically green. And then they do rates per 100,000 cases per 100,000, and then a percent positivity rating. And so you have to meet criteria either in both of those categories or in one or the other to be considered. So for instance, I'm trying to keep in the past week from July 31st to August 6th, there were 13 cases, so we were over the 10. There were 8 per 100,000, which makes us in the low category, but you also have to have less than 5%, and we had 1.6%. So that put us in the low category, which means you can choose full in-person or blended learning model. And these aren't mandates, these are recommendations, but you have to determine if you're gonna be the schmuck that doesn't follow them, kind of thing. So so while it's not a mandate, it's kind of a mandate. They just don't want to take the blame for it. But the week before, there were 41 cases, which would have immediately put us into the moderate blended learning model or fully remote, in spite of the fact that the percent was low, but the rates per 100,000 were high. And so it gets a little crazy when you're trying to figure out the the little chart that goes with it. But at least it's something, which we had nothing before. And so it's in that aspect, it's okay. And so we'll be tracking that and we'll be discussing that each week as it comes out. And there is a little clause in here that says you kind of have, let's see if I can find it. It says, in order to confirm stability of county transmission, when its county's corresponding threshold changes, school entities should wait to see the results from the next 7-day reporting period before considering a change to their instructional models. Now that would seem that you kind of have a choice to, if it goes into a moderate or a high, that you would kind of have a choice. But I'm not sure that that's what they're actually referring to. So we need some clarification on this, because it goes further into saying then, to ensure the most effective transition for students, it may be appropriate for a school to wait even longer than a week, basically, up to a full marking period to transition to an instructional model that increases in-person instruction. So I think what they're implying is once you drop, or then you just because the numbers drop the next week doesn't mean you automatically go back to, so that's a little bit something that's a little fuzzy.
Continue.
Yeah, so just note that that's in there. So we'll be, again, tracking this every week and discussing.
So students coming to Penn State,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You don't count the students in the county total, I assume.
Yeah, they do. And I'm going to guess, I didn't really ask this question if the prisoners are counted or not, because in Huntington County, they're counted. The thing I think you have to think about, and this is just me muddling this over because this is what my brain does 24/7, is that just because the students are back, and if we don't count them, we all probably have relatives or friends or family that work with those students. So they're exposed to those students. You can't count them out of the count. And the same would be with the prison. It's a big employer. And so if people are going in there and coming out, those numbers kind of have to count. And so.
Well, not just the cases, but then does that increase our total that we're working from?
Sure.
Percentages, right?
Yeah. I mean, like the per 100,000.
Yeah.
I think once they're back, they'll be counted in the total population. Okay. Yes. So it could balance itself out.
It probably won't, but.
I know.
Right.
Sure. We're doing can do.
I was going to say, read the shirt.
Wearing the shirt every meeting. I'd just like to, back up a little bit and say, when she says people are working tirelessly, it's not just administration. So our custodians hustled to get buildings ready for teachers to be back on July 27th in the buildings, a full probably 2 weeks ahead of what we normally let them in the buildings to start playing around in the rooms if they wanted to. Teachers not required to be back until next week. And so, but many teachers have been in the buildings, working in their classroom, arranging desks, tossing furniture, that kind of thing to try to make this work. And so everyone has really just stepped up and is, and honestly, I'm not getting, well, there's people who are frustrated, people who are worried and anxious, all of those things. People are just stepping up and just doing what needs to be done because it just needs to be done. And that's from administrators down to custodians. And so it's just been kind of very phenomenal to see that people are doing that. And so we appreciate that so much, that we're in it together. We don't have the answers. Every day it changes, and we're doing the best we can every day that we're coming to work. And so, and that's all you can ask of people. We know it's going to be bumpy when we get back to school, and that's across the entire world. It's not just Bellefonte, it's not even our county, it's the world. And so we'll take bumpy and we'll just make it work, and we're going to be forgiving of ourselves. We're going to roll with lots of things, and it'll be okay. And we'll figure it out. Last thing I want to just, I had some questions. And by the way, I've gotten so much positive feedback. The hybrid model was, a little controversial to offer. And so, but I have gotten so much positive feedback by offering that to families. I mean, I get probably 25 to 50 emails a day just related to this. And it waxes and wanes based on, like I sent out a reminder yesterday, so it's been more like 100, but almost every family starts their email out with thank you. We know this is tough and that you're doing a really nice job. And then they ask their question and they get clarification or whatever they need, or I can't open this document, can you help me? Or if I do this, what can I do that kind of thing. So it's been, and I guess it's evidenced by the counts. So these are rough. Registration closes tonight. So it's kind of like watching a ticker tape go up, because even when I did this at 4 o'clock before I came here, we had one number and we're already up by another dozen in, numbers kind of thing. So where we stand at the hybrid model right now is 276 kids. Now this is a little inflated because sometimes people resubmitted their form, probably accidentally, they were just probably trying to make sure it went and hit it again, or not sure if it went and hit it again. So that's a little inflated, but 276 was the latest number. For Bella, it was at 461, and just proof that it was at 449 when I left work today, and now it's up to 461. But again, I sent a reminder yesterday, and so a lot of activity. Folks who procrastinated in making a decision are taking the time to do that now.
I'd just like to add, I pulled the numbers at 4 o'clock myself, so my numbers are off, but somebody I think had asked about percentages, and again, we're still waiting. In fact, I had a parent just email me like in a panic because the deadline's looming at midnight tonight, and she was like, help me. So that's what I was doing. But when I figured out the percentages, we are roughly, and this is very roughly, again, the numbers have changed, but roughly about 10% of our kids are doing hybrid.
Yeah.
About 16.5 to 17% are doing Bella.
Yeah.
Which puts about 73 or 74% doing full in person. That's right in line with all of our surrounding districts.
Yeah.
State College has 70%, Baldwin has 78%. So we are right in
our
line
original
with
survey
everybody
as well. Our original survey as well.
Yeah, our original survey as well. Yeah. So, and again, those numbers, we're still waiting till midnight tonight to get some of those numbers, but that was just the rough numbers that I
And it runs about 10 to 12% for hybrid in each level, like elementary, middle, high, and closer to 15-ish% in middle school, high, and elementary for Bella is roughly what it runs down to as well. So so we're now, since it closes tonight, now the new scramble tomorrow for principals is to look at those lists that are classes balanced out, getting those people all contacted so they know if they're in the A or the B model for hybrid. Bella, they're reaching out, of course, just to finish the enrollment process with them. So that's a daunting task too, but we planned it this way to give parents as much time as we felt we could humanly give them. So as close to school, because we knew things were changing so rapidly, and we didn't want to make them choose in the middle of July and then things drastically change in the middle of August, and then we have them changing their mind anyway. So we, while it's giving us we have a big rush right now then to process this data. In the end, I think it was better for families for us to wait. So that will do. So that's a couple things that are just happening right now. We're really in the middle of the task force hasn't really been meeting. It's really now principals meeting with buildings, staff, and working through what we call the nitty gritties, of do you have all the posters up? Do you have all the floor stickers down? Do you have enough desks? Do you have enough this? Do you have enough that? And where is this going to be? Where's moving rooms around, moving classrooms around, getting carts for special teachers to push in or whatever it might be, determining where the isolation room is if we have a case, those little details that are just kind of like, everywhere. So that's that.
We do have a meeting about staffing tomorrow. And I know some of you reached out about the Bella numbers. It's important to note that we don't provide the teachers for Bella. Odyssey Ware and Pearson do. So there are teachers, and getting them registered will hook those kids and those families up with their teacher through those, whatever. And we actually pulled some, there's a training, I believe, on Thursday for Pearson and things. So Duffy's helping with that administrative piece. We have another secretary who's helping with that administrative piece. So getting that hooked up. We also are going to use staff. We have a certain number of staff that cannot be in our schools for medical reasons, may have some medical concerns and things. Michelle Simpson has been meeting with every single one of them individually to find out what accommodations they need following ADA guidelines and those kinds of things. So now I think she has some, I know she has a couple tomorrow and I believe a couple on Thursday, but we will have a list of those folks that can't be in the classrooms teaching, and it could be a teacher, could be a support staff person. Once we have that list and we find out whether they need to telework or whether they need to come into the Bella Center, we'll be working with those groups of people to provide the support that Bella provides. Keep in mind, again, like I said, kids have their own teacher through Odyssey Ware and Pearson. But we also provide that additional support and that additional, push and encouragement and tech support. And we have our tech guys on it. We do have a little bit of a glitch with Chromebooks right now because we typically buy touchscreen Chromebooks for kindergarten because they're much easier for them to use while they're on back order. So I don't know. If
So we're
you've heard
using
anything
we're
lately, how
using,
we rec-
yeah, we're using some the ones that would have been phased out from fourth grade, to cover kindergarten until theirs come in. So it's just a little bit of a.
We have a plan next week for the principals to get the Chromebooks to the students who've enrolled in Bella, as well as those kids who have chosen hybrid, because some students chose hybrid or are going to be assigned Monday, Thursday, some are going to be Tuesday, Friday. Well, we start school on a Tuesday. That means our Monday kids are not going to be there the first day, so to speak. So the principals are working on a plan to touch base with those Monday students so that they can get their Chromebooks and they can understand. And we're doing a sheet of how they get uploaded into Google Classroom and all of those kinds of things. So we also, with the numbers, the great part about this too is that it has reduced the numbers in our classrooms and in our buildings. So 6 feet is much easier than it was in some places before. I mean, we have, if you go by building, we have maybe sometimes at the elementary level, I'm going to use Marion Walker as an example. I think you have 34 or 35, something like that. And Bella, I don't know what you have for hybrid. But
I don't have that.
But roughly speaking, so when you drop a building down by 50 or 60 or 70 kids at the elementary level, you're creating much more spaces in the classroom and those kinds of things. So that has helped tremendously. I have to echo what Karen has said. The parents have been wonderful. They've been very supportive. They've asked very, very good questions. I will be sending an email out to parents next week saying, we know there's going to be glitches. Please be patient with us. Please help us through this. I want to assure them that what we're doing virtually, should we move to a complete virtual model, will not be anything like we had in the spring. Teachers are expected to be teaching virtually, basically speaking, and following a schedule and following a class for those students who are in person if we have to go all virtual. So it's a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of working really hard. It's a lot of trying to meet every challenge and every need that we can face. Next week, we have 3 days of opening days where there's a lot of things planned and helping teachers and giving them that time to collaborate that we had talked about earlier this spring. They have a clerical day next week too. And then we have a couple days before we jump into the first day of school. Questions?
Can you tell us a little bit about the training that teachers will have next week that might prepare them for both the hybrid kind of teaching and remote teaching? Are there specific kinds of, because I know that's a concern that a lot of teachers are feeling very anxious of how they're going to do this and how they are going to handle even if it's completely remote at some point and being able to switch quickly. So.
Yeah. And that's causing a great deal of anxiety in all of us.
Right.
And Donna's shaking her head. Teachers have trained and they go to school and they train and things, and now we're asking them to do something very, very different than what they've ever done. In an environment we've never been in. I mean, who would have thought we were wearing masks at a board meeting? So there's all kinds of anxiety. So next week, we had kept those 2 days open on Tuesday and Wednesday, more or less to meet the teachers' needs. So if they need help teaching virtually, I just met with the coaches, the instructional coaches today. What do teachers need? What do we need to do for them those 2 days? We kept the schedule completely open so that we can meet their needs. We also kept it open so they can collaborate. We want teachers to understand that it's not going to be perfect and we're going to do the best we can. And I think if we can try to get a mindset of we're all in this together. There's high anxiety everywhere from parents, from everyone. If if we can work together to make this work the best we can for each and every child, that's our goal. And whatever that takes next week is what we'll do. In terms of Bella training, I think you would ask that question too. As soon as we identify staff, we had also decided on those 2 days that the staff that will be working with the Bella students will have those 2 days to plan and prepare and train, so to speak. There's not a lot of training that goes with it because, like I said, there's a teacher of record from Odyssey, Ware, and Pearson. But it will at least, we'll get them figured out who's encouraging which student, that kind of thing. That will be those 2 days next week as well. So
I was gonna say, that's a piece that just cannot be understated. It's taken a lot to get Bella, I think, where it is. And the confidence in Bella, like what we talked about at the last meeting, the Facebook comments and things like that on the positive feelings of Bella could potentially wash away and be something that people will not return to for the next 10, 12 years if they don't have a good experience, and likely could also then decide to go to one of the other cyber charters, which would, I don't know what Ken would do about that. But yeah, I mean, I think 400 students when we're used to having 50 that's a lot.
So the good news too is that the staff, staff that met with Michelle Simpson, who can't be in the schools, are incredibly eager to help in any way they possibly can. So the staff that have met with Michelle that have restrictions on coming in, and that we can telework, we can hook them up with the kids via email, via whatever that takes. That we have staff that can come in, but they can't be around large groups of students. So maybe they could come in and help tutor or work with one kid. They have been, the teachers that, and she's not here tonight, but the teachers that Michelle has met with and the support staff that Michelle have met with are incredibly eager to be that support that we need in Bella. So yeah, there's a plan. It's these little pieces that we kind of need time to figure out. And as I said, we have a staffing meeting tomorrow. We also have, and I don't know this, but we could have a situation where, I don't know, let's make some 84 kids left Marion Walker and 60 of them were fourth graders. And so suddenly we have an extra fourth grade teacher. We'll reassign them to Bella. We haven't had those numbers because we don't have them yet. And so that's the other plan for staffing tomorrow. But we have work for the people that need work, and we have an ability to do all of that. So
yeah, and I think conversely, we have to make sure that Google Classroom goes well as also, because there were some complaints in the spring about, and that was really like, really building the ship in the middle of the hurricane kind of thing. And so, and we were also getting direction from the state to, hold steady on your curriculum and just do remedial work or enrichment work. And so we want to make sure people understand that Google Classroom is a full curriculum, full go, and that here we go. And so we need also to make sure that works out well as well. And so one of the things that we worked on with the coaches and a couple of teachers, and we piloted it with a few teachers who were meeting as a grade level to, at the elementary level, change the lesson plan format for teachers. And so while it looks new and different to teachers, when they really look at it, what they're going to see is that it's many of the parts of the lesson plan are like, boop, set aside, we want the down and dirty, the nitty gritty in their lesson plans. And then also that will also serve, their lesson plans will be posted on Google Classroom and will also serve as parent communication. So the parent can look at it and say, oh, here's the week at a glance, which is, so it's written for at a parent level and also the teacher, and we're accepting that as their lesson plan. So some of those folks say, I have to write 2 lesson plans, I have to do this and that. It's like, we're trying really hard to make some of these adaptations for teachers. And while they haven't had a lot of training in it, I think once they really kind of look at it, they'll say, okay, this is new, but it's really easier than what I've been doing, and it will be okay. And so we have a plan for next week too, to help teachers work through that and to just get that going as well. And I think it will help to smooth the transition a little bit into Google Classroom as well. So we're excited about it. The coaches are really ready to work with K through 12 next week in working through the gaps, the assessment, the different kinds of pieces that teachers are worried about. And so they already have a plan. They have some templates ready. Of course, there's not enough of them to go around. So they have templates to get people going, get started, and then between principals and coaches and other key folks, we'll be diddly bopping around to each of these groups, just making sure that their collaboration is going the way that it needs to go. So there's a lot of thought been put into it.
The direction in the collaboration though is one thing that, I mean, hopefully
Yes.
they're given a lot of direction and not
Yes.
just thrown in a room and say,
Exactly.
figure out what you need to do. You
Right.
know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
what can happen a lot of times, and I just don't want to see
Yeah,
that
no, there's
either,
been a
that
lot of
they'll-
behind the
They'll be
scenes.
feeling like they're wasting 2 days when they should be doing something else.
Right.
Real
Right.
specific action plans of what they're going to
Right.
accomplish during that time.
Right. And those are already in the works.
How,
Probably ready to
How are
go.
we addressing AP or like people in the gifted program or AP classes when it comes to virtual? My understanding is they have to come on campus for the AP classes.
I honestly don't know the answer to that. Mr. Fedison would know the AP classes or gifted classes. Gifted classes, we have a gifted teacher who will be providing services. Now, if they're in an advanced class,
Well, either A, if they really want to not participate in in-person learning and they want to do remote, can we do that with AP or gifted? And then the second thing is.
like, are they required to come for an AP class?
Exactly, that was my understanding. So, and then more importantly is if we're forced into an all virtual
Right.
learning environment, how do we deal with those?
Right.
Have we
I
thought about
honestly
that?
don't have the answer to that. Like Mr. Fedison's been handling those questions about that, so.
He would. The other little glitch, and I don't want to call it a glitch, but the other little complication for AP classes is that that's not our curriculum. We have to follow the AP curriculum. And if you recall last spring, what happened was we were done in March and our students hadn't completed the AP curriculum. And so they were going to take the test so they could get college credit and things. So the AP organization in and of itself said, okay, we're only going to test to the content up until March 13th, I believe it was. And so that's all that was on the AP test then. So, and to some extent, we're a little bit at the mercy of AP, but that's probably a question for Mr. Fedison. I don't know if he's on here or not.
And well, and they don't call it red anymore, but in a red situation, we're kind of at the mercy of that. In a hybrid situation, we could potentially, so even though they're technically only supposed to be there 2 days a cycle, a limited number of kids could be coming 4 days a cycle. And so that could be, a way to go, because we talk about learning support kids and kids who might have specialized classes, even VOTEC or CPI, excuse me, that those might be the kinds of students that would continue to come more full-time.
Yeah, my interest was both for the educational piece and also for parents that may have paid money for the
Right.
classes, the
Right,
credits,
right,
and
right.
how are we
Right.
looking at that?
Right.
And college in the classroom would be the same kind of question.
Yeah.
Those
And I've
students would
deferred
say-
most of those questions to Mr. Fedison. Like when I get those questions, I usually just defer and he answers them
Mr.
directly.
Fedison, there's a challenge for you for next meeting. If you want here.
Yeah, yeah.
Again.
So the coordinator just has to be able to coordinate, not know everything.
Good answer.
The other thing I was gonna say, with the numbers that you talked about, so like with like roughly 70% of students, 73% of students choosing full-time, and then 10% being hybrid, so you're looking at like just under 80% capacity probably on most days, right? So with that, I mean, if teachers, and would teachers, when will teachers know how many they're likely to have in their classroom? Will they get like a?
Well, hopefully
a
this
roster
week. Yeah,
this
I mean,
week?
they should get their
So
schedules
if they have concerns about distancing within their classroom and the proper distancing, like the 6-foot distancing within their classroom, knowing now what the number might be,
Right. They've been planning for full class is what they've been planning for.
But
so this is bonus.
Right,
When you
but-
can take out 3 desks or 4 desks.
And I've heard from like the high school meetings that I've attended, there are still a lot of teachers that are really concerned about being able to distance within their classroom appropriately. And like you said earlier, we don't want to be the schmuck that doesn't follow the recommendations.
Right.
So that's where I'm just trying to find out if they have concerns about their particular classroom.
They should be reaching out to their principal, because I mean, I've said to my staff, you're not allowed to have less than 3 feet. We've said 3 to 6 feet in our plan. And so we're not lying to parents and saying we're getting a full 6 feet. And so you better have 3 feet. And if you don't, then we need to find like 2 of my classes are moving to the library and the art room because they're bigger. And so if that is happening at the high school or middle school or another elementary school, they need to be talking to the principal and saying, help me make this work, or where else can I go to make this work? Or can things be shuffled around. So one of the things that's happening, like one of my classes is real lopsided now. And so the teacher said, are we going to shuffle some kids? Well, yes, some parents are going to be unhappy, but I'll be the one to call them and say, hey, we're trying to be safe. And so I need to move your kid to a different teacher. And it's not nice, because kids, especially elementary kids, get that, mindset. They knew, it's a little harder to adjust, but the same could happen at any building where we're adjusting, caseloads or classes so that things are more equal and equal, so we can get the bigger distance. I know there's some unique challenges at the high school. We just talked today about hallway transitions that, we don't want to be the Georgia school, the picture of the,
Yep, exactly.
and we don't want to be the Georgia school.
Correct.
And so how do you change classes whenever you have all of them in the hallways, and how do you approach kids to get them on your side, to wear your masks, and you need to be an active participant in the physical distancing, not just the teachers barking at you. Like, how will you be presenting that to your kids? And so that's a challenge because, high school kids, can think for themselves and act for themselves and, that kind of thing. So we want to appeal to them, because many of them want to be in school, like physically in school. So how can you help us keep you in school? And so that was the conversation that I had today with, we were trying to brainstorm what can we do to encourage this. So those are the kind of things that are being discussed. And so I would say to a teacher who's worried about the spacing, talk to your principal, because maybe there's been some thought about it and we're still problem solving it. We're still problem solving the morning, I can tell you, especially at everywhere, high schools having concerns as well. They're supposed to go directly to the classroom, not congregate, So now, and again, nothing's a mandate, it's all recommended, but still. And so we're really trying hard. How are we going to manage kids coming in? What time do the buses come? The bus schedules just got done like today. And so what time are the buses coming, and what does that mean? Where will they go? And so we were trying to problem solve that today. We all kind of had a plan, but it wasn't sort of like solid. So let's talk this out one more time. Like, how can we solidly say kids are going to go from here to here and that kind of thing and be safe? So this is the kind of stuff that's very, very challenging, but, and we're trying to push stuff out to our staff. We have staff meetings usually weekly. But if in between times, I tell my staff, if something's bothering you, I have a meeting tomorrow morning with some staff members who are concerned about something, 2 items. And so I'm like, well, let's sit down and talk about it. We need to problem solve it. And so if it's on your mind, let's problem solve it. And so.
Aaron, we have like PPE and disinfectant and all of that. Like we have what we.
Aaron's not here. I know the what I call the magic spray is here.
Yeah, he's going to address that. He's actually talking on Monday to the entire staff about what that looks like.
I know the ionization machines are here.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 big things.
Units for the elementary, I believe, right?
Yeah.
What's
Air
that?
conditioning units for the elementary that we rented for Benner and Bellefonte Elementary.
Yes.
We also just, I believe, and I have to look at Ken, we're ordering 800 plastic shields as far as those trifolds that if you've seen on Facebook. I don't know, we ordered them. Yes, I'm looking at you.
Yes.
I don't believe they're in yet.
Yeah, and so we've talked to teachers too about how do we get by when some things are, missing, and what does that mean? So the shields aren't required or necessary, but we feel they're an extra level of protection for especially teachers who are when they're doing small groups, or they need to be closer to a student, or that kind of thing. And so, while again, it's not required, we feel that for the comfort of teachers and for students and a little additional safety, we got some to give to those folks who will be a little bit closer at times with students as well. So, so those are kind of like all the, it's not like a secret, but maybe, week to week, we're telling our teachers all these things, but maybe they're feeling a little behind the 8 ball a little bit, but it's not intentional to like keep any secrets. So, I have a Google Doc that is constant. It's just an ongoing communication tool. And a lot of the principals use this. And so when something pops in their head, they put it on the Google Doc and then I answer it, and we do that all day long, all day long. So.
Mrs. Bradford, will we know how many teachers have been assigned to Bella, maybe by the next?
Oh, yeah, we'll have exactly who's assigned by then. Yeah.
So the uncomfortable conversation, for example, Ken, what's the cost for a student in Bella? Didn't we say it was like $5,000?
No,
It's a little bit different now because we have to purchase the K through 2. I'd have to break it out. Obviously, it's a lot less with 400 students in there.
Yeah, well, that's
Per
what I
cost
was
per
wondering
member.
for cost, but still, if we're talking $2,500, that's $1,000,001.
yeah, and we're paying half year versus, we're paying by semester, I believe, so.
So in case kids move in and out,
Mhm.
and we're paying per seat, not per.
That's Pearson we pay per seat, Odyssey where we have to pay per
Student.
student. But we're only paying a semester at a time because we don't know where we're going to be in January. And there may be students who say Bella's just not for me, and I really just want to go back to school. And we may have students who are back at school who say, I really want to go to Bella. So there has to be a little bit of a fluid movement and all of that. So yeah, the cost could be, but the alternative is losing $15,000 to $27,000 to PA Cyber. and
Oh,
Commonwealth
that
Which is
Academy.
why we absolutely
Yeah.
have to get this
Well,
right.
making sure it works, yep.
400 students represents an entire building. And the personal, what Mrs. Lightsell was able to provide, which was, so much of that personal contact, we have to have the teachers who are able to reach out and do that. And it's not that I'm concerned, but it's just imperative that we get the Bella piece absolutely right.
Yeah, and we're working on those plans. I would add that it doesn't necessarily have to be a teacher. I mean, we have some great support staff who I know are ready
Correct,
and
but
talking.
somebody.
Yep.
And they just need they need to know the training, they need to know how a student is progressing, how to be able to read the screen. Also how troubleshooting, I know my son took a Bella course last year, and so there was some learning curve on our end and questions that went back and forth. So 400 people with questions to one person is not gonna work.
No, that's
And
not the
having
plan.
those response times, because that response time to questions needs to be relatively quick so students can get done what they need to get done, and not become frustrated. And I think, I just think that's, like Mrs. Smith said, we just need to make sure that it goes well. It's gotten such a successful program, and just like in Google Classroom, and all of it does. But
Yeah, and I would add that, not because they were told to or had to, but 2 administrators stepped up and offered to, because Summer's the principal of record for that, offered to, be assistant principals with her to try to help the management part of it, helping to just oversee all the folks who are going to be helping out. And so there's a meeting, I think, tomorrow or Thursday, and they don't know what that's going to look like or how much help they can be yet, but it's like they volunteered themselves to be sort of her assistants in that, so that she's not feeling so overwhelmed as well as the principal trying to manage that as well. So
yeah, it's it's going to be our third largest building, so to speak, or
right.
third.
Well, right, right.
I think where I was headed with that conversation, and it's probably going to be a difficult one at some point in the future if we have to have it. I don't think anybody knows at this point, but if you're in a typical classroom with what a teacher sees, 20 to 25, 400 kids, that's 16 teachers. In a Bella program where you're paying for a teacher in an assigned program, and you might have a 1 in 50 ratio of helping teacher to,
Right.
talking about 8 teachers.
But remember, they're not actually
Sure that-
teaching, they're monitoring.
Yeah, the people supporting Bella don't teach at all from our end.
Right, but Mrs. Lightsell worked very
Yeah,
hard
yeah,
to reach out to
yeah.
50 students.
Yeah.
My
And
point
that's our
is,
plan.
if we have
touted that.
400 to 500 people going into a cyber program,
Yes.
that leaves a lot of teachers that we need to.
Correct to sign somewhere. That's,
Yeah, or have the more difficult conversation if it looks long-term, what we do with that.
correct.
I don't know
That's
what we do with
absolutely
that
correct.
situation, but it's something to think about.
Yes.
I hope that we can use as many as possible to support the Bella program, because I think it's a once and done. This is our shot at it.
It is.
Our claim to fame is here at one time.
Right.
But on the other hand, we can't carry 8 to 10 extra teachers if it
correct.
turns out that that's what we have.
Correct. Correct. And that's going to be a balancing act, because I am sure that we can't have, it doesn't make sense to have a teacher to have 3 kids in their class, and then, we need the support in Bella. So yeah, that's going to be a difficult conversation, and those meetings are set up in the next 2 days.
I just wanted to put it out there just to make sure we're all understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other part of this is that, and I've said this repeatedly too, the most important thing and I get, Bella, I understand absolutely what you're saying, but we also need to make sure that how we're teaching virtually in the hybrid model, the in-person model, the full whatever, we keep our kids, because that could be a disaster financially for us. We have to make everything work.
Oh, yeah.
The best we can possibly make it work. And so that's why I really have appreciated the principals and the teachers and all these folks reaching out to parents to try to build partnerships with parents to make it work for their particular family and situation. So yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, what with the hybrid and teachers feeling anxious about kind of doing things differently is just, fake it till you make it. Like, don't let the kids kind of feel like,
It's kind of like first year teaching.
Yeah, like I'm uncomfortable and this sucks, but I have to do it kind of thing.
Yeah, and what we're trying, and they're still wrapping their heads around it. And so that's why we're trying not to be, trying to tell them to be easier on themselves, because they're really the ones setting the expectation. We love that about our teachers. That we have to find a way that your lesson plans and assignments it may be some extra work, but it's not that you're doing two separate teaching, because that's not what we want. So if whatever you're doing in class, how does that look online? Is it exactly the same, or is it tweaked, but not completely different? And so we have to find that balance. And I think that's what's causing a lot of anxiety. And so we want to, we've had, Julie Henry has been phenomenal with some trainings for those people who've attended them. I have a long-term substitute who's going to be in for 6 weeks. She is a retired teacher from the district, but she retired before Google Classroom. And so I met with her yesterday, and she goes, guess what I did over the weekend? And I said, tell me. And she said, I watched YouTube videos of Google Classroom. And she said, I think I can do it. And so, that's the kind of attitude we have from people. And so she knows it's not going to be perfect, and she's not going to be the best Google, she is a specialist. She's filling in for a specialist teacher, but it's like, she goes, I might not be as polished as the regular teachers, but I'm going to be okay. And it's going to be all right. And so I really appreciate that, and lots of teachers have been doing things like that, going to the trainings or doing their own trainings. And we super appreciate it. We will have trainings next week when the teachers are back, because we know the technology piece is a thing. But we also appreciate those teachers who've stepped up and done their own, professional learning to get ready.
I think we'd all like to be back the way it was, but I don't see that happening
Nope.
anytime in this school year. So.
Nope. Yeah. Nope.
I'd give anything to have some sort of normal.
Yeah.
All right, can we let?
All right.
Oh, you
I
got the rest of your report. Okay.
Uh-oh.
One last question. I got some parents who were wondering about the protocols with children who are displaying cold or flu or like symptoms in school, as well as if they're doing that at home.
Yeah.
If you can
So
speak to that.
we have a sick day protocol that the nurse put up. And so I've gotten this week of more calls about my kid has allergies. So he always has a cough, blah, 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 those kind of things. And cough is one of the ones where if you have one of these symptoms, stay home kind of thing. So what I've been recommending to those parents, and the nurse can advise me. The nurse wasn't around when I got the call, but I said, you need to be in touch with your school nurse. You need to get some medical documentation that my kid has asthma, my kid has allergies, and these symptoms are frequent, so that it's documented in our system. And so then whenever your kid is hacking a class, we might still send them to the nurse, but then the nurse knows, okay, is this allergies or is this something different than their normal kind of thing? And so we really want that to be a nurse medical thing, not a teacher having to try to figure it out, and a parent not feeling like they have to keep their kid home every single day. So we really want them to be in communication with the nurse and be working that through with our school nurses, or getting something from their medical doctor to do that.
Yeah, and I guess the way it sort of reads is if they get sent home, then they can't come back in until.
Right.
And if they have a sibling, then the sibling is under the same.
We don't determine that. Department of Health would determine the sibling part. It's if they get sent home by our nurse and with a recommendation to maybe be tested, then the Department of Health is our first phone call. And they tell us if the sibling stays home, or the class, or the whoever, the bus, whatever it is. We don't determine who gets quarantined per se. We can send a kid home and say you need a medical excuse to return. But if they get a medical excuse that day and can return the next morning, that's between, you know, the doctor and that. The Department of Health quarantines people, not us.
So if a nurse does send a student home, they may or may not say you need to go to the doctor.
Right.
And have
Right.
any kind of, I guess this is a reasonable question to ask you, but the threshold in terms of making those kind of decisions.
I don't know. I'm leaving it to the medical folks to determine that. Our nurses feel pretty confident that they're, you know, ready. We're you know, they're going to do the best they can too. They're going to be on the cautious side as well. You know, if someone's got a, you know, runny nose, it's going to be different than someone who's got asthma or allergies. I mean, runny nose could be with allergies too. So, you know, that's why I suggested to these parents,
Be proactive.
be proactive and get some medical documentation saying, here are my kids', you know, medical history, and here, you know, here's what it looks like, because it may look different in different kids. You know, asthma can look different in different kids, and so what does it look like in your kid? And let's get it documented so the nurse can be on top of it. So we're going to have to, like everything else, just kind of feel our way through that a little bit at first. You know.
Our nurses have been heavily involved in all the task force meetings and things.
Yeah.
So they provide a lot of
They
recommendations.
just, we haven't pushed it out to staff yet, but we have how do you take off your masks. We have information on how mask breaks should look. You know, what does a mask, what are the sort of the steps to a mask break? You know, there are steps to a mask break. And how many minutes you can have a mask break inside versus outside. You know, little things like that didn't even occur to me, you know, kind of thing. So we're relying heavily on them to help us with some protocols right now. Yeah, and we're trying to start pushing things out to parents now over the next 2 weeks. They're probably going to be sick of emails and things like that, but we feel like if we send a packet home this thick on the first day of school, no one's going to appreciate that either. So.
One thing about emails too, I don't know if it's still an issue, but I did notice it in my email. Emails that come from different building principals say the building principal's name, like as like the sender, and I don't know if there's a way to correct that. I don't have a student at Marion Walker.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I might not read that because I have a student at the high school.
At first I thought that, yeah, people know now that from me is read it, but at first not. I don't, there must be a way in that system to make it look like it comes from the district, but I don't, I thought I did click that button, but it's still coming.
I mean, just because there may be, I don't know if there are folks that are missing important messaging because of the way that
it's being sent. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we want it to come from the building principal, and other times sort of from me, from a district perspective. Yeah. So that parents know it's like everyone's getting it, not just your school or your building.
And it wasn't just you, because I think it might even been something from Summer to
yeah.
Storm to.
Probably for Bella. Yeah. 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 There. We needed to just chat about that, because I thought I was clicking a button that said that it looked like it was coming from the district versus me, but clearly not.
That isn't what it looks like on our end.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to sit down take a report.
Yes.
So I didn't have enough to do, so there's Title IX now. If you followed this at all, and there's actually a resolution, I believe, on tonight's agenda. New Title IX laws at the federal level were passed on May 6th, 2020, and they are all set to take effect by August 14th, 2020. I have just spent 2 entire days, yesterday and today, in Title IX training through several different legal firms have provided training. It's really comprehensive. There's a lot of things we need to change and do. And I know Mrs. Smith had reached out and said, do we have a Title IX coordinator? We do have a Title IX coordinator. However, it's going to be my opinion that we're probably going to need to change that. Typically, the Title IX coordinator is the director of HR. So that's something we need to change. At this point in time, it's Mr. Bean. I'm not really sure why, but we do have a Title IX coordinator. So, we need to start there is where I'm at. We got lengthy, like different templates. There are 17 different templates that we need to have at the district level in answering different pieces of, anything from investigation for Title IX to findings and decision makers and all kinds of things. I didn't put much on because I put this on here the other day. I can do a much more comprehensive report at the next board meeting about what Title IX is going to require us to do. We have a lot of legal requirements. We have a lot of policy changes that absolutely have to be made. That's probably going to have to move to the front burner. And I know Mr. Gazar had started the policy committee again. PSBA has recommended policy guidelines to it for us, as well as administrative regulations. It is a large task to do all of that. That being said, we have plans to move forward. In the meantime, under the advice of all of these legal firms we worked with, lots of districts, because we don't have these things in place, are adopting a resolution saying that even though we may not have that exact policy in place at this exact moment, that we intend to follow the new regulations and laws as they're written, that the new regulations and laws supersede anything we may have already had in policy or practice until the time when we can get those things in place. I will say the training that I had these last 2 days was a very comprehensive to-do list, like you need to do this first, you need to do this second. And so I have all of that. I just have not had time to work through all of that, but we definitely need to get on the Title IX changes as soon as we possibly can. So that's what the resolution is for tonight. Do you have questions about Title IX? I know Mrs. Smith probably got some alerts as well legislatively.
Just understood that we could have like an extension. Everyone's going through the same thing. We just, yes, we're working on it. We hear you. And you got that message too.
Yes, that's exactly right. And that's what
the coordinator shouldn't be the superintendent or the athletic director.
Correct.
Ideally, the assistant superintendent.
Well, it depends on what you read. So you have to have 4 people it could be more than one person. So we have 4 positions we have to identify: the Title IX coordinator, investigators, decision makers of 2 level, both the first level decision maker and the second appeal level decision maker. So there's actually 2 different kinds of decision makers. And then the 4th is what they call an informal facilitator, who helps just move the process and make sure that everybody's following all the things that we have to follow. They could also meet with an employee or a student or whatever it needs to do. So the key is in those decision makers, depending on the size of your district, you need to be very careful who those final decision makers are. So, and we're also right now in a very unique situation in this district because there's me, who's in both of those positions. So it may be the need to identify the assistant superintendent and the superintendent in those roles, but right now they're probably both going to be me until we get to the time being when we do our search and that kind of thing. So that's where the tricky part gets in. But we also have other administrators that feel we are fortunate. I was on these calls with these very small districts who have maybe 2 or 3 administrators who are now trying to scramble to fill those 4 distinctive roles. Some of them are contracting outside through IUs and things. We're fortunate we have a pretty comprehensive staff that we should be able to fill those roles. May look a little differently right now, but that should work itself out later too. Finally, the last thing on my report is this inclusion, diversity, and equity update. I listed some of the things that over the past few weeks we have done and worked with. Mr. Boffman particularly has been all over this. They're gathering resources, he and Mrs. Simpson, about all of the issues that we're facing, so that when we move to this committee, and we're on track for that in September, then they can start to do those items that I had listed in that timeline. We do have Dr. Sam Adams as a guest speaker on opening day, which is mandatory for all staff, who will be talking about inclusion, diversity, and equity. I know that in particular, Mr. Boffman has been very energized in working with Dr. Chatters at State College. She's very excited to be partnering with us and working through all of the issues that we face as a community on our own, as well as how we interrelate with the State College community. So they've had lots of meetings. As I said, we're kind of in a resource gathering phase right now. I know that we had received an email from, I think the board DL did, about the PS or the PDE toolkit, the equity toolkit. I don't know if you saw that. We had already made copies of those, and I gave one to Mr. Gazar tonight. We have those. We were going to work through those with the administrators even before any of this happened. Dr. Saylor had gotten those for us. Great, that's a great resource too. So we're still sort of in that gathering information phase. But if you see, then I feel like we're on track that the end of August, beginning of September, we'll get this committee together. We'll establish and create mission and vision of the committee and the scope of the work, the belief statements, create goals of the committee, review current research and best practices, which is what they've been gathering over these past few weeks. I can add this to my report each time. Mr. Goffman and Mrs. Simpson are eager to share anything with the board. I know that as we form this committee, we need to have a wide variety of perspectives. I think that's the best way we can handle it. And I had already mentioned that I really feel strongly that we need kind of all walks of life, so to speak, and perhaps we need students from the high school or middle school that could participate in that as well. So what that committee looks like, we haven't completely etched out yet, but that's the next part of our discussion. And we've had some folks that have reached out to us who have been part of these discussions that have come to the board and addressed the board and have provided insight. One reached out in particular and said she really wants to be part of the solution and the help. And so engaging those folks will be our next step as we move forward in the whole process. I neglected to mention too, and it's not on here, I did meet with Mr. Fitzgerald last week, I believe. I've lost all track of time, talking about courses. He's actually working on a separate course to cover a lot of things that he's wanted to, and they wanted to as a department. So we sort of talked a little bit what that might look like, and he started working on some courses in alignment in what we do at the high school level, and the middle school level is still working on their social studies curriculum as well. So as part of that, after that discussion, I reached out to the IU. I don't know if I have that on here or not, but I reached out to the IU and talked to Diane Ubona about doing an equity audit in our curriculum. And she's on board with that. I asked her to just give me a couple weeks till I can get back to her, but that's certainly on that scope. And that could be part of this committee work too. I kind of feel like it would be helpful to have curriculum experts look at our curriculum as well as the committee itself. So that's where we are. Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was the longest report ever.
Yeah, well,
Ken's not liking it much, I can tell.
it's only, I don't know how you put in the hours because it's only going to get worse at school. First day of school gets closer. So.
I've decided sleep really isn't for me.
Thank you. Thank you for all your hard work. All right, with that, do we have anything from either the Education Association or Support Personnel Association?
Well, with 2 weeks till the start of school, the teachers also, just like everyone, have been working really hard. We're super excited to actually see students face to face and in our rooms again. I can't tell you how much. I'll tell you as well, just, I know we have a lot of teachers at home just listening to the board meeting and everything. And I've had several texts and emails and messages already sent to me that what just happened in the superintendent's report, I have to say, like, it's really thrilling. We really appreciate that question and answer and dialogue and hearing, you have the same concerns we have and just brainstorming answers and that's great. I know nobody likes like a 10 or 11 o'clock board meeting end, but it's really appreciated because, we all have that weight, of getting this right and what's about to unfold. We are really appreciative that we started meeting weekly. It used to be monthly with Tammy and Michelle Simpson, the association does. And it's just wonderful to bounce ideas back. We need those forums, just like you kind of just had, of figuring all of this out. And just, it would be really great even if a board member, at least now and again, even joined in, because we're all party to the same wanting a success story. We never saw this happening, and you know what I'm saying. But I forwarded it to you early this afternoon. our association did do a survey of just reopening and kind of where thoughts were at, where we were looking for trends or et cetera. So I sent some data to you that you can look at. And again, it wasn't anything like meant to alarm or anything like that. It's more to work together. Like we are concerned about next week, same as what I'm hearing from you, of using that one precious more week well and wisely. And so we're ready, and brought up themes of just what are the big concerns and everything. So maybe it could change some focus of just making sure they're hit next week. So if we redid it at the end of next week, we might have stronger results in certain areas of what we now understand better or something like that. I know, as you can see from the email, like time and just how are we going to manage all these expectations obviously is a big one. And what are the expectations, and do we truly get it, and how's it going to unfold, and how do you do things like teaching remotely and online well that wasn't how we thought it was going to be when we went into teaching, and we want to have success stories there. And even just being on the same page. Like I was listening to Mrs. Krish, who gave a great presentation. But on the lesson plans, I mean, a lot of that information just went out today, and I'll tell you, my email blew up. And to hear, and I've had Tammy explain, how it probably, it hopefully will be easier, more streamlined, more useful to the teacher and the parent and the student at home, etc. But how it was kind of received, and looking at it at a glance was overwhelming. And like, how is this going to fit in, and how on earth are we going to do this? But again, that's kind of where we need to do next week, right, too, and making sure each building and each building principal has some really open dialogues, and maybe it actually does change next week, and needs to be flexible or whatever, so that we can go into the school year as best possible. But again, that was kind of the point to, for anybody involved, which is all of our parties, to make best use of next week and hopefully have the best start we can, and knowing there is going to be blips along the line, and to continue these conversations. And we thank you for all the questions you asked, because people are listening, and we're glad that you're thinking a lot of the same thoughts we are, and just having the same worries, and we'll figure it out. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to all the teachers too that have been working throughout the summer. Well, I mean, as everybody has been, the admin team, everybody.
10,
But I mean,
15,
that's
20
yes.
hours throughout the summer, every week, 2 and 3 hours at a time.
Yeah.
And that
Meeting on a
and they
Monday,
didn't have
meeting
to
on a
do
Wednesday.
that. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's a lot of commitment. I mean, I know everybody has a lot of commitment to keeping everyone safe as we can. I mean, mitigating risk as much as we can. But I recognize that that's time that it isn't paid, or isn't maybe even thanked as much as it could be too. I mean,
yeah, and that's very appreciative. Like, I mean, and I know I'm, just one example of many, but I mean, I was on the phone with members and talking about concerns and processing things after midnight last night, and my texting began at about 7:30 this morning answering things. And I was in trainings today with Arlen, and who did a wonderful job. And I mean, it's quite a process. So, but thank you again.
Thank you. All right, education support personnel, anybody in attendance or online? If so, feel free to jump in there and we'll come back to you. Otherwise, let's move on to the treasurer's report, item 601. With Mr. Bean.
So treasurer's report is on the board docs packet. If there's any questions, be happy to answer them. Go ahead.
Seeing none will be filed for audit.
Thank you. 701, it is recommended that the board approve the board bill lists associated with the various funds for July of 2020. It's presented on your docket this evening. Motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Questions, comments? All right, roll call, please.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Pearl,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald.
yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. The investment report, item 801, it is recommended that the board approve the investment report for July of 2020 as provided. Motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments? See what you mean, Mr. Bean, with all those 0.1 and 0.2 percentages.
Yeah.
Not no good. Anyways, with that, roll call, please.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes. Okay, motion carries. Entertain a motion for consent items 901 through 1006.
So moved. Second.
Anything anybody like to pull out of that, or we're okay with that? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll.
Yes.
Motion carries, thank you. Item 1101, it is recommended that the board approve the following donations for the 2020-21 school year. It's 3 boxes of 3-ring binders from Shannon Bruno to the district for distribution as needed, and 105-gallon buckets from Lowe's of State College to the Pleasant Gap Elementary School. Motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Comments?
I'm gonna ask the obvious.
What are the buckets for?
I have no idea.
Maybe that's the new chair you sit on. We sit on 5-gallon buckets.
If they can answer sometime in the future, I'd be okay.
Yeah, Duff, I don't know if Duffy's on air or not, but.
I mean, if you give everybody 100 sponges too.
All
If
right.
Duffy isn't on here, I will get that.
That's okay.
In all sincerity, though, thank you to all who continue to donate, especially in these times of need to the district. We appreciate it. Roll call, please.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. 1102, it is recommended that the board approve the superintendent to hire personnel as necessary for ratification of personnel in September. A motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And Mrs. Bernard, would you like to explain that just a little bit?
So what has happened in the past is that because we don't have a meeting till September, we need to staff our classrooms. And we had some retirements. In fact, you have one tonight. And so we're in the process of hiring those folks. Some of them we're still waiting for Act 168 paperwork. We're at the mercy of other districts for that. But basically what it does is provides us the opportunity to hire those folks contingent upon your final approval in September, but we can get them started now and we can staff them. We have, just so you know, we have special ed at the Untitled affiliate. We have the high school dean of students. We have high school English. Again, it's Act 168 paper. Bellefonte Elementary paperwork. We're waiting for their emotional support teacher and the orchestra teacher, and we're waiting for his paperwork as well. So in fact, we can't put them on the agenda because we don't approve teachers without the Act 168 paperwork. So that just provides us a chance to get them started and then with board approval later. I think that's been a common practice over the past several years.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver,
Yes.
Dr. Badger,
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner,
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald,
Yes.
Mr. Gazar,
Yes.
Mr. Kroll,
Yes.
Mr. Musser,
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And just because you just mentioned the retirements, I have to say out of the 5 retirements, I didn't mention it when we voted on it, but 35 years for Mr. Lambert in the district is very commendable. And while we appreciate everyone's service, that is nothing to shake a stick at. That's very impressive. So we're going to miss Mr. Lambert and appreciate his service greatly. So sorry for the diversion. Let's see, 1103. It is recommended that the board approve a tuition waiver from Mrs. Erin Henninger to allow under policy 202 her children to attend Marion Walker Elementary School for the first week of the 2020 school year. Do you have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Comments?
Just to clarify, they purchased a house, but the closing's not till August 31st. And so technically until August 31st, they're not in their house.
Oh.
And so it's just asking for her children to start the school year with us rather than go to, I believe it's Bald Eagle, those first 4 days of school. That's the, I don't know if it's on there, but we do have a copy of the house they're purchasing and that kind of thing. So.
It shows the closing. And we do this as a matter of routine as well. So.
Right, I was a recipient.
Yeah.
Years ago.
Under the circumstances, it wasn't coming from Bald Eagle to our school, right?
That's true. That's a good point.
Continuity for the students.
No, well, but we also want to bring in a Durham.
Not that Bald Eagle's dirty. I didn't mean that. No, I didn't mean that at all.
Kidding, just.
All right, we're all getting a little
Getting
giddy here.
Yeah.
All right, any other comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Weaver.
Yes.
Dr. Badger.
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mr. Gazar.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Steiner.
Yes. Motion carries, thank you. 1104, it is recommended that the board approve the 2020-2021 fall and winter sports coaches and extra duty, extra pay student activity positions with a clear understanding that in the event we would have a resurgence of COVID-19 or some other similarly situated contagious disease outbreak that would otherwise prevent the opening of school or impact fall or winter sports or student activities to the point that they could no longer continue, that all of those persons who occupy these positions will be paid on a prorated portion of their salary for any and all work completed up to the time of actual or contemplated closure of the school and or alteration of the fall and winter sports or student activity schedules. That is quite a sentence.
This legalese, we got this from the solicitor.
All right. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Questions or comments?
Is this what happened in the spring? Is this how we handled the spring?
Well,
Oh,
in the
it's
spring,
better.
we were under Act 13. We had to pay them regardless.
Oh,
So what
it's
this
not-
says is that if we pay them, like we have coaches working right now, so we're going to pay them the prorated amount and we're going to continue to pay them. But if we get shut down again, absent of an Act 13, we can't pay people for work not performed. That was one of the things that the Pennsylvania Auditor General pointed out to us. So it only will affect if we get shut down completely and we can't do it. If, let's say, just for sake of argument, football got moved to the spring or something, they would still get paid if it were in the spring. It's just, if a sport doesn't happen at all, we're not obligated to pay those folks because they didn't perform any work for us. Or we pay them a prorated amount for the time that they have spent.
Okay, other questions or comments? Thank you. Roll call, please.
Dr. Badger.
Yes.
Mrs. Bruckner.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mr. Gazar.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Steiner.
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. 1105, it is recommended that the board approve the resolution to comply with and implement all requirements of the Title IX regulations as presented. A motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I believe you've already cleared this up. Anything else you want to say on that?
No, that pretty much is standard practice everywhere in all districts. Now, it's the extension that Donna had mentioned, but it requires us to follow the law, which is what's really important, so.
Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bruckner.
Yes.
Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Yes.
Mr. Gazar.
Yes.
Mr. Crowe.
Yes.
Mr. Musser.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Steiner.
Yes.
Mrs. Weaver.
Yes.
Dr. Badger.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries. Again, for the benefit of the virtual environment, do we have any comments from the public? Anyone virtually that would like to make a comment to the board?
While he's looking, I know what the buckets are for.
What?
The buckets are, this is from Duffy, the buckets are for student personal belongings beside desks. They also could double as seats when teachers go outside for instruction or for mask breaks, et cetera. I hope that answers your question.
So they come with lids.
Nice.
So they come with lids.
They must come with lids, yeah.
To sit in the bucket.
Yeah, I hate to see that.
I can't get out. I'm stuck.
Every time they go out, they have to dump the
I'm
contents.
sorry, I can't touch you. Roll on the ground. What time is it?
All right, thank you, Mr. Knapp. 12:02, anything for future agenda?
I was wondering if, I know we talked about this in a couple of meetings, but if there is an update for technology in terms of any technology, I'd like to know about any technology that might be purchased either for classroom to aid in instruction, or I know we've talked about hotspots and those kinds of things in preparation of potential remote learning or hybrid, but an update on those.
I can do a more thorough, but just so you know, we already have working on lapel mics for teachers. We have wide angle cameras that we've talked about and looked at. Arlen spent some days, I believe, in Ms. Sharp's classroom today, talking about how sound and camera work with a Chromebook and things to, you know, to get the optimal. And Mr. Bean has worked on some hotspots and Wi-Fi and things.
Okay.
I'm hopeful, again, I'm gonna throw this out, I'm hopeful that we will end up getting that continuity of education grant. If you notice, Phillipsburg was just awarded theirs, which is another $19,000 that would be dedicated to technology. I keep pushing for that. We'll see what happens. Like I said, Phillipsburg just got 26,000, I think, is what was on the news. So, yeah, we do, but we can give you a more thorough
That'd be
update
great.
than that.
Thank you.
Any others? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.